A very good afternoon and welcome back to the day 2 of the Autocar Professional Two-Wheeler EV Forum. My name is Mayank Dhingra and I would like to begin by thanking our sponsors for this event, our presenting partner Varroc, powered by BASF, technology partner Matter, and associate partners Covestro and Celanese. While yesterday we discussed the various demand levers, challenges, as well as the crucial subject of battery safety in electric two-wheelers, today we are all set to deliberate upon the numerous opportunities that electric is set to unlock for the Indian two-wheeler industry, both for fleet as well as personal commuting segments. We are going to be talking about battery as a service, battery swapping, pay-per-ride concept, and a whole lot more with industry experts that we have lined up over the course of this webinar. And we sincerely hope you will enjoy the discussions and also engage with our experts by sending your questions in the chat box. So without any further ado, let me hand over to my colleague Nilesh Vadva for taking us through the keynote address for the day.
Thank you, Mayank, for opening the session. And as we all know, Niti Aayog has recently come out with the draft battery policy, which is something that the overall industry will be quite looking forward to. And without much ado, I would like to now invite Mr. Chetan Mani, who will be delivering the keynote address. Mr. Mani, for the unversed, is an evangelist who needs no introduction, but has been in the industry for quite a long time. In fact, he has over 2 decades of experience in the clean energy space. And it was in 1999, India got its first electric four-wheeler car, which was a brainchild of Mr. Mani under the brand name Reva. And in addition to in addition to holding over 30 global patents, Mr. Mani is the chairman and co-founder of Sun Mobility, a clean energy company which is working with OEMs not just in India but globally to accelerate the future of e-mobility as we know it. Over to you, Mr. Mani.
Thank you so much, Nilesh, and a warm welcome to everyone this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. A very interesting topic of how we can really unlock the potential of electric two-wheelers on this area, right? I mean, we all know that, India is really took over the two-wheeler market globally and really driven by the industry, automotive industry, two-wheeler industry focus, as well as the tier one supply chain that really worked hard to create a full solution on this, right? And it's only with this kind of effort that in 2018, we actually surpassed even China. And in 2019, we peaked at over 21 million in sales on this area. And of course, things have been down last year as a combination of raw material prices, COVID, fuel prices, stricter emission norms, and a general decline in the transportation side of it. But in spite of that, we've also had a very buoyant exports where, last year, for every 4 vehicles that were sold in India, we sold 1 vehicle globally, and it's helped the industry significantly. So it's an important backdrop of how big this industry is and the kind of impact we could see as we move towards electrification, right? I also really appreciate what the government has done on the two-wheeler space. I think the new policies that came out on the FAME side has really resulted in the EV industry growing to over 460% from last year to this year. And that's phenomenal. It's trying to really create that kind of impact and get that attention, which is much needed to trigger this entire industry. So what's next, for electric two-wheelers as we think, right? And I see at a more macro level, 3 broad opportunities in front of us. How do we really capture the Indian market at scale on this area? We're just 2% today. On this is huge for us to get to 30 to 50%. There's also large opportunity around the commercial vehicle side of it. Some countries like Peru, for example, at 90% of their vehicles are commercial in the two-wheeler space. So there are large opportunities, not just in the personal transportation, but also in the commercial transportation as we think about it. And that does need us to think of this industry very differently, where we can capture both those markets. The second is, how do we fully leverage the entire EV ecosystem? And not just a product. Most of our focus today for companies has been at a product, right? But how do we create the right Indian standards and structures so that we could therefore also lead globally on these spaces? And that becomes very important, especially as we're a global leader in the two-wheeler space. And the third for us is, how do we become a global leader on high-quality electric vehicles by selling and exporting at high volumes like we're doing today? And really, to be honest with you today, our exports are absolutely nil, where in the case of other vehicles, we have 20 to 25% of our vehicles that would be exported. So there's a large opportunity in these three areas. And I think if we're going to, as an industry, try to really capture this new opportunity, then there are certain things that we have to check box on, right? And these are that we really have to reduce our reliance on imported components. I'm sure it's like a broken record, and you're hearing this from everyone on this area, but especially when you think of batteries and electronics and motors and controls becomes very key. The second is going to be how do we create a much stronger R&D and to spur innovation, design, and reduce our costs on this area. We've done this very successfully in the ICE two-wheeler market. How do we replicate this as we think of the electrification? How do we look at a well-established ecosystem for manufacturing? And how do we look at the innovative shared economy new models that are coming out, which are going to offer higher value for money for the consumers, be it battery leasing, battery swapping, mobility as a service, ride sharing, e-taxis, last mile delivery, that are going to have a large opportunity and an ecosystem disruption, and also help other industries, nascent industries that are growing in the country on this area. Now, if I were to look at that from the opportunity, I do still see some challenges that we need to look at on this front. And to me, the challenges are we today have a lack of quality products. There are only a handful of OEMs that have high performance two-wheelers, electric two-wheelers. We've got to really focus to get that on this. We've got to be really concerned of costs. Today we do have subsidies, and some products get 40 to 50,000 rupees subsidies. These cannot last forever. How is the industry working to get costs down so that as these subsidies over time that taper, that this can be self-sustaining, right? And given the current scale of business, it's likely that the current subsidies may even run out in this financial year. And so this is not something we'll look 3-5 years from today. We'll be putting a lot of effort today to think on the cost side. The third area to me has been safety. I think the recent fire incidents have really exposed the vulnerability in design and quality. And I understand a lot of deliberation has been done yesterday on it, but it's something that will challenge the industry unless we address it head on. Right? The lack of widespread charging and swapping infrastructure is also very important. And building consumer awareness and confidence, both to help sales, but also to look at the post-purchase experience on this area. We need to have trained people within the industry at service levels, spare parts, everything, for people to have the confidence, because they're used to a certain level of support and service in the industry, and they expect nothing less when a new product is coming out. So how do we address some of these challenges? And again, a lot of us have been talked over the last yesterday too, but the first to me is on product innovation, right? Design and performance to meet Indian consumer desires, right? We've got to stop importing a lot of these things, create solutions for India, for people here, and that are designed for Indians. Look at product quality and reliability on the choice of components, the testing and validation and design excellence that we can bring in on this area. A very high focus on safety, right? At design, manufacturing, and it's important we go beyond. We go beyond the regulatory framework of AS 156 or AS 038, but how do manufacturers and tier one suppliers take much more responsibility? Think of edge cases, look at ownership and testing. There's always, I remember 20, 30 years ago when some of the global OEMs came in here, right? The horns of some of these vehicles never lasted even for 6 months. And we had to create requirements because you use a lot more in India, the temperatures are higher. And so therefore you came up with India-specific requirements. And this is very important for us, for the industry to create its own standards and requirements on this front. Supply chain indigenization, local manufacturing of key components are absolutely critical, but it should not just be manufactured like we've done in the past. We should look at the capability of designing, from battery systems to electronics to motors and other components that are going to constitute almost 50 to 60% of the bill of material of such vehicles. The opportunity for us to use standardized hardware on this area, but customized software, so that we allow OEMs to have flexibility in their brand and their positioning, but we have low cost on this area and component availability. The world has huge challenges today on chip. industry, and it's going to continue for some time. So if we have standardized hardwares around BMS, controllers, clusters, converters, chargers, etc., but software that's very customizable, we could create reliable, low-cost hardware structures with multiple companies producing them on this area, and at the same time ensure we have supply chain risks are reduced on this front. But at the same time, we see a large opportunity for OEMs to customize, right? So these these could even be in consortia or where OEMs and tier ones come together. And I think we should take the learnings from other industries of how the PC and cell phone industry grew. It was a lot of this sort of standardization that enabled the entire industry to grow, where cameras became so cheap or chipsets became so cheap. But still, there's a distinction between company A and company B in its final product on this area. Right? How do we look at enabling the charging and swapping infrastructure to create cost-effective solutions that's interoperable among players to help reduce the cost structures for consumers on this area, reduce time to market. If solutions and batteries and battery infrastructure is already created, you could reduce time to market by 50% and the cost of development. And this is very critical as the industry is kind of growing, because its product development cycles can no more be 3 to 4 years. They're going to need to be 9 to 12 months without having a challenge on safety or validation. So how do you rethink, therefore, new levels of partnership for us to excel? Right? How do we think of business models that are innovative on battery swapping, battery leasing, mobility as a service? How do we think of solutions and normal products? All our focus is what do we do on the full two-wheeler, but how do we think of the infrastructure that goes with the business models that go with it on swapping and charging? After all, it's a full solution what the consumer finally needs, and not just a piece of this area. The role of government and supporting this ecosystem with enabling policies on this area, and really considering implications by putting around specific industry standards. It's very important at the nascent stage that innovation is really allowed in the industry on this front. I think the government's recent steps for the highest subsidies for FAME, as well as the policy on battery swapping that has actually been unveiled just today on this area, are all in the right direction of creating a solution and a framework. And it should not be overbearing, but it should enable the industry to grow by continuously innovating on this area. We also need to reflect that if India is today is the leader in globally, how do we create standards? Should we be following standards of other countries, or should India create its own standards? The country that creates its standards leads the world. If we're the largest manufacturer of two-wheelers, it's only relevant that we create standards from this, and we can take these to the world. And therefore, we're able to not just export products, but we're also able to export solutions. As a country, it's also important today for us and all the participants here that how do we build the India brand globally on electric two-wheelers? Again, this could be not just on products and solutions, right? It's our first exposure to the world. We aren't selling that much. The way we create the products we sell out of here will impact not just each of your companies, but will impact the country and impact all of us in a very positive way. We've clearly seen countries that have excelled in technologies have created a country brand effect around that, which is a multiplier effect. We have an option to do that. It's a new space. We have the right capabilities to enable this to happen, right? I see this having a huge impact on the country, right? It's really going to help reduce our fuel consumption. 70% of our petrol today gets used on two-wheelers. And given the high prices today and the way it's affecting our economy, it's a real big concern for us that we need these solutions that are sustainable. And of course, if 70% of petrol is being used on two-wheelers, naturally a large portion of the emissions are coming from that, and that directly relates to the reduction in emissions on this. We have an option to create new business models around the shared economy, around energy, swapping, charging, etc., that could really help us grow the economy, but also increase a significant number of jobs. And I think we have a huge opportunity in front of us to become a global leader in exports, not just products and solutions. Again, a multiplier effect in the economy. So I'm really bullish. We started off the year well in terms of how the sales have been. And I think it's only for us to lose, but it's not just a company. I think it's about industry coming together, the country coming together in this transformation. The opportunity is so big that we're all here to win, and we have to win together. So thanks again for having me on this keynote speak, and look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Chetan. Very many key takeaways. Value addition instead of just owning the manufacturing, standardized hardware, software, learnings from the cell phone industry. I'm pretty sure, many of us, could take, implement some of the pointers that you've taken to very well grow in the electric two-wheeler space. So now coming to some of the queries that we had, as you mentioned, the electric two-wheeler industry is at an inflection point where you see dozens of players entering the market every other day. But with that, there is also the recent incidents that have taken place in the market. How do you think the industry should carry forward that that the what do you say, the incidents that have been highlighted recently do not pull down the overall engineering and genuine efforts that some of the players are undertaking in the market?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm sure if a petrol scooter has a similar incident, it doesn't hit the front pages of a newspaper, right? So it's unfortunate that at any new set of technology, right? You saw the same thing in CNG and LPG when they were introduced in early days, but today nobody thinks twice about it, right? Personally, I prefer to sit on a battery than sit on a gas tank. But I think you're very right. This is an important thing for the industry, right? And there are several things, and I'm sure that's been talked about a lot, right? It's from how we design and own the design of it. But that's not sufficient. It's also about the manufacturing. And we don't control the full manufacturing too, right? Even today, nobody makes cells in India. So the qualification of cells are very important, right? The level of intelligence of battery management systems is very critical as we look at it here, right? Now, when the industry is growing so fast, it's easy to get parts from others and look at it. So at least at the early stages, much stronger qualification of suppliers, not just a one-off test, but understanding the design, understanding the systems, understanding the manufacturing process, understanding the risks in each area and make sure they're mitigated are going to be important for us in the short term. For those companies, right? The companies that are doing great job in designing everything in India and building it, right, are the ones long term who are going to be the ones who would continue. And I think the industry will realize and consumers will realize over time that that's what's needed. So it's a bit of a wake up call. I think it's right. It needs it today, and I'm hoping that this ensures that the industry starts to look at it far more. I mean, we've been doing lithium-ion work for 17 years, and we understand these challenges, right? And something we've addressed years before, and we got to recognize we are dealing with high energy and has to be done safely. And there is not a shortcut to this area, right?
And do you see that that with the government policies and subsidies announced by both the central and state government, there's an argument that that while the policy and subsidies are an enabling factor to drive adoption, it is also it also puts in pressure on OEMs to introduce their products and bring their products faster to market, because as you mentioned, we do not know till when the subsidies will last, and it's as they say, make hay while the sun shines. Do you think that's a double-edged sword that the government is looking at?
I think it's company specific, and this is why I think the industry needs to have, it needs to think more long term, right? And you see players who are more established will be thinking long term. They are thinking not 1 year, but how we 5 years and 10 years in this business. And companies that are thinking long term will make the right decisions. And there are always going to be companies that are going to be, have other challenges that have to look at it to growth and stuff here. But, one thing we have to be cautious is we can't compromise safety, right? You may grow and grow at a pace that those compromises don't happen. Just because the external factors have concessions and stuff, that is, the choices are left to us as individuals and organizations. We can choose the path we take. We need to choose the right path.
Do you see that the electric two-wheeler industry right now, it has got a lot of soaps, which makes the owning an electric two-wheeler either competitive to owning an IC vehicle, especially in the scooter segment, or cheaper than that? But do you see that if in the long run the policies are the subsidies are taken away, the electric two-wheeler industry will continue to grow, or there will be there will be again something that the OEMs will need to work upon?
I think there's three things we have to look at, right? One is Awareness in product. If products are wow, people are going to jump on it and take it. So that is very critical. And the hygiene of reliability and things. So that's going to build the industry. Great products will always sell well, right? The second is on the economics that you rightly pointed out. This is going to need two areas. How do we indigenize and lower costs of our supply chain, which is very critical. Simultaneously, how do we think of new business models? For example, in battery swapping, if you separate the battery from the vehicle, the cost of the vehicle can be less than a gasoline vehicle, and the cost of energy can be cheaper. So, so such models allow you to look at the benefits of electrics and extending it over a period of time, right? So I think it's all three. Great products that we think we put out, right? Newer business models on this area, and a very, very focused effort to look at reducing cost, because the subsidy amount is huge. And if that disappears tomorrow or gets reduced, it will impact the industry, because the industry hasn't geared up itself strongly enough to reduce costs at the rate of which subsidies will drop.
And in the electric two-wheeler space, right now we are looking at the emergence of battery swapping, and as a model where the vehicles are sold without battery, and battery could be provided as a service. Do you see that there could the electric two-wheeler space and the three-wheeler space could be the prime beneficiary of battery swapping, and the charging infrastructure will be focused for the bigger vehicles? Or do you see that the electric two-wheeler industry will also benefit from the charging infrastructure?
So Nilesh, first thing, I think all solutions are going to coexist on this area. And I think that the shared mobility market will be driven more by battery swapping, right? Our experience, just last month, we put hundreds of vehicles around battery swapping two-wheelers, right, in a couple of markets. We find the experience is very good because these consumers, are delivering and doing things, and they have multiple deliveries, and it's not consistent. And there's no range anxiety. Refueling is within a minute. And these are located at gas stations, which are similar to how they would go in this area. So we've not changed driver behavior or habits. We've just given them a solution that's faster and more convenient to use on this area. So definitely that would happen, right? But certain consumers in the B2C also will go for that. Very often we find that consumers buy products for 1% of their requirement, right? And that one day in a couple of months that they have gone 120 kilometers because they've dropped their kids and had an extra errand to run, they only remember that when they go to buy a vehicle. They, of course, discount what the OEM tells them because they're all under ideal conditions of what you'd look at it. So they want 140 to 150 kilometer range. When you start to get to that level, you need very large battery packs, which make it very expensive today on this front. So swapping addresses that, because that day they want to go extra, they can just do one more swap on this front. So it addresses also the range anxiety part of it as the industry starts to grow. But again, I think they will coexist, right? There are going to be people in apartments who have space for charging and going, but there are a lot of people who park their vehicles outside, and don't have infrastructure, right? And so you're going to need to coexist solutions on this area and let the industry and the consumers make the final decision of what works, and support all of such technologies in a uniform manner, so that they can all grow as the industry grows.
Okay. And I think we are almost running out of time, but I'll just a quick question last. Do you see that Indian two-wheeler manufacturers could agree on a modular or a same battery platform that could that could drive interoperability between different makes and models? Do you see that happening in India?
Yeah, but we need to look at, there are several points to it. The first is, we generalize it. You have scooters today at 1.2 kilowatts and you have scooters at 8 kilowatts, right? Clearly a battery can't work for both of them, or it's oversized for one or undersized for the other, right? So it's not one size cannot fit all. You need an architecture platform and safety requirements that would be different on this front, right? But there are opportunities where if OEMs keep a certain space and the overall maximum dimensions are finalized and certain communication protocol is done, then what happens is these vehicles can be made compatible on this area. If I take this cell phone analogy again, as we looked at it, right? It's like the early days, you had SIM cards and there are different sizes of SIM cards and you'd put a little adapter to look at it. As long as it wasn't bigger than the largest size, you were okay. So similarly, there could be smaller batteries, different performances on this area, right? So the nascent stage, if a consumer walks into a showroom, let them make an option. They may take battery type A or battery type B. They may want higher range or higher performance, right? And therefore they may choose a different option, right? But if they could keep that option and the OEM could package protect both of them, then what happens is the consumer can choose what they'd like, they can choose the operator, and the OEM can give those options to the customer. So we're able to create a win-win with a different level of interoperability, right? And so it may not be one size fits all, but there can be structures that enable consumers to benefit and OEM and the industry to benefit.
Thank you. And any parting comments before, like, we move on and let you go? Because I understand you have a pretty tight schedule.
I know. I'm so excited at this where we are. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And I'm just seeing for the first time everything coming together, right? The energy from startups, the industry investments, where oil prices are, where renewable energy is coming in. We are at a serious inflection point. And I think the people who are in such conferences and such events are the ones that are going to make the new India. And really excited to be working with all of them. It's about going to be how we actually partner in the future to make this vision happen. And thank you for having me here today, and wish the program and all the full success.
Thank you, Mr. Mani. It was indeed great to hear you as usual. Look forward to connecting with you again soon. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I will now like to invite my colleague Mayank to take us to the next session.
Thank you, Nilesh, and thank you very much, Mr. Mani, for that wonderful keynote address. Giving a brief overview on the current state of the industry and where we really are headed. And like you mentioned, all of us are really excited seeing how technology is kind of evolving and the entire evolution of the electric two-wheeler space in India right now. So thank you very much for your time once again. And with that, we would move into the next session, which is a panel discussion. And I would like to invite our guest today. We have Dr. Prabjot Kaur, who is the former CEO of the Center for Battery Engineering and Electric Vehicles and CEO of Esmito, Mr. R.K. Mishra, the co-founder of Yulu Bike, Ms. Ranjita Ravi, the director and co-founder Aura Energies, and Mr. Akash Gupta, the co-founder and CEO of Zip Electric. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for being with us here today.
Thank you, Mayank. Thank you.
So, all of you are into some sort of an innovative business model or the other right now. And some of you are also developing some end-to-end full stack solutions. But the commonality that I can see is an electric two-wheeler. So how do you think electric opens up the space to eye more opportunities within the personal mobility segment? And what are those fundamental attributes of an electric two-wheeler that are kind of helping to tap these opportunities? So I'll open the floor with that question. And as we say, ladies first. So Dr. Kaur, would you want to go ahead with that first?
Sure. Thank you, Mayank. Nice of you. So yes, as you said, it opens the door for electric, and as you and probably everyone in the audience knows, India is a primary two-wheeler dominant market. So 80-85% of our vehicles are two-wheelers. So converting it into the electric make all the way more sense, because anyways, apart from saying that this is an electrification era, India doesn't have its fuel. We don't have our own diesel, petrol, and all those things getting generated. So we have a very obvious requirement that we move into electrification in the automotive segment as soon as possible. And over to that, if you see, our import bills are shooting high. Everyone is troubled with the costs that are going high. And this dependency that we have on the countries where we do not know what is the impact of the war and all other things, and the impact that the fuel itself has on the pricing for everything, agriculture or be it any material, it has a direct impact. So yes, I believe electrification is derived from many things apart from the fact that affordability in two-wheeler segment. Second, the fuel independency that we require, though you can say that here again, for the chemistry part of it, we are again dependent upon imports, because right now we do not have cells that are getting manufactured in India. But to top up on the value add, we have huge value add, because anyways, it's a replacement of the fuel. And as compared to what we had there and what we have here, it's an advantageous overall well-to-wheel kind of a situation when we compare. So much more advantageous. So I would say these are the factors that that are driving the electrification in two-wheelers.
Sure. Mr. Mishra, if I take that thought to you, so what do you think are some of the factors which are enabling the industry right now to tap into new possibilities with electric two-wheelers?
Nothing can be done before its time. And as they say that, we are just the enablers. I think the timing and the need has, kind of come together. I think there are some tailwinds, I would say, which are, of course, responsible. 3 years ago, 5 years ago, we didn't have anything which you call a reliable electric two-wheeler. So technology-wise, if it wasn't there, how can you put it in the market? So that has happened. And it so happened, for example, from the demand side, I think COVID was a very big booster for this. When individuals stopped moving, the goods had to be taken to individuals, correct? And this was a segment, gig economy segment, which is more organized than you and me individually buying the bike. When you individually buy the bike, the parameters are very different because we Indians are very price conscious, longevity, brand. And given that you're going to put your own money for something which is not just a utility, but also something which is for somebody, it will be a prestige, for somebody it should be a status, and for somebody it will be just utility. So there, when people are a little bit more unwilling to experiment with the new form factor and the new technology. But when it comes to utility value, people would like to essentially find something which does the job and is available and affordable. And I think that's how this gig economy workers were very big adopters of this electric, two-wheelers. And it so happened they were just available. Then there are companies which provided. For example, Yulu was primarily in people mobility. And when COVID came, people stopped moving. Yulu almost became the lifeline because there were times in cities like Bangalore. In fact, neither public transport, bus, train, auto, car, nothing was allowed. Only vehicle which you saw on the road was Yulu. It almost became the lifeline. So I think there are a lot of factors like demonetization pushed UPI and the money, digital money, management. Similarly, I think COVID and the technology coming together of technology pushed the adoption of electric two-wheelers. And then, of course, not to forget the petrol prices. If the petrol prices there was a time, I don't know if you guys remember, the petrol prices became negative during the COVID boom, correct? When the COVID was at its peak. But then imagine the petrol was $20 or $30 per barrel. It'll be a very, very different situation. Today we have petrol reaching $100, $120 per barrel. So I think a lot of tailwinds came together, and I think the circumstances. But the good combination was that electric two-wheelers took off. This has not happened for four-wheelers, as you can see. And by the way, as Madam Kaur mentioned, India is primarily a two-wheeler economy when it comes to automotives. Four-wheeler, primarily people are still buying a third car, a car just to feel good that, okay, I have something green, and a car which will be doing a city travel. I still would not like to take my car from Bangalore to Chennai or, for example, Lucknow to Delhi. So this is, I think, my understanding, and it all now depends upon the players and the regulatory authorities. For example, what stops? Maybe I'll talk if you have a second question on that. What industry and the government should do to make sure that the adoption is much better and it really helps the economy and serves the country's needs.
Yeah, we will definitely come to that, Mr. Mishra, in a while. But before I go to Ranjita, I'll take your point to Akash. Mr. Mishra just mentioned that, during COVID, when people stopped moving, it was the goods which needed to be reached out to people. And we've seen Zip actually, being really, helping out in a lot of B2B companies in that. So what do you think, Akash? What are the enablers that are, driving this overall, uptick in the adoption of electric two-wheelers if you talk about various innovative business applications right now?
Sure. Thanks, Mayank, and hi, everyone. Hello to the panelists and the entire EV forum. Good to be here. Yeah, so one thing which, while I relate with Mr. Mishra, what he mentioned that, EV is now getting a lot of attention. But at the same time, one thing that we realized during, while we were building this business all through, that the good movement will always remain, right? People would always want things to be delivered, whether it's B2B, whether it's B2C. It's very different way to look at it, but things have to move for economies to sustain, right? And COVID gave a crazy example there that essential goods were the only thing that people wanted, right? Otherwise, we could not have survived those 3 months of lockdown. So and while we were doing B2B deliveries and we were doing rentals of our bikes, we realized that this is the best time to look at and help all those businesses who are looking at getting things delivered. All they wanted were at the time that we get a good service to them. Now, why EV helped there? As to answer your question, so while logistics will work, goods delivery will happen, but EV is very, very critical into the logistics ecosystem is because the last mile delivery actually contributes to about 44% cost of the entire logistics, for any company. Now, this is, and with the rising fuel prices, this is becoming unsustainable, right? When fuel is at 100, your per kilometer cost is a big, driver, and hence your margins are again becoming negative. That's where EV, which can deliver it at 20, 25 paisa versus at 2.5 to 3 kilometers, you can actually save a lot more because every delivery is about 8 to 10 kilometers, right? And 10 kilometers multiplied by 2 rupees, you're saving 20 rupees. And that actually on a cost of 50 rupees, it's 40% margin, right? So that's the value that we realized. And that's what businesses also realized, that if we work with electric players, they would, one, be able to save cost at scale. Second, they also, climate change is real, pollution is real. They all have their own ESG norms, which they have to meet at certain point in time, right? The government pushes big, actually. If you look at Delhi government, they have already, put in their EV policy that the entire logistics between, 2 to 3 wheelers have to go 100% electric by 2025. So those are the drivers that obviously push these businesses to look at electric vehicles. And that's where we saw an opportunity that they will never invest in vehicles. They would want someone to manage all this service, EV as a service, where if the vehicle is stopped, someone can help. How to charge, how to swap, whatever that needs to be done, that's not their headache. That's where we saw an opportunity and we started solving nut by nut and bolt by bolt in that sense. Yeah.
Right.
So that has been our approach, man.
Right. No, I'll come to you, Ranjita. We can see the product behind you in your virtual background, the Mantis that you've been developing. So, now with electric vehicles, what sort of, what attributes of these vehicles, like, Akash just mentioned, then, the low cost of operating, basically, that is the first thing. Also the environmental benefits, which a lot of companies might be, interested in, but not as a personal user. I might not be, really interested in the environmental benefits of these electric vehicles. So what attributes do you think are kind of driving this overall, adoption of electric two-wheelers when we consider specifically the innovative, business ideas that we are seeing today?
I think the cost, like what has been mentioned already, the total cost of ownership is something that's very, very interesting for people. This is the photo behind this from a ride that we did, which is a 13,500 kilometer ride around India with 2 bikes of 27,000 kilometers. What we spent on charging the battery packs for this whole 27,000 kilometers was probably equal to about 12,000 or 15,000 rupees.
Oh, wow.
Whereas an equivalent 300cc petrol vehicle would have easily cost you around 1 to 1.5 lakh rupees in just petrol, just to do the same ride, right? So this is something that people are seeing very loud and clear. But I think the reason why new business opportunities are actually coming up now is because the reliability of the products or the level of engineering that's going into the products has improved much more than what it was say 5 or 6 years ago. The vehicles are, performing better. People are able to take them on these long rides, whether B2B or B2C, the requirement still remains the same, but the reliability and consistent performance has to be there, right? And that's what is making EV two-wheelers as such far more interesting these days. And we're seeing so much of it just on the roads. That's what makes them a lot more interesting. So one is, of course, people are finally realizing the TCO benefits, and the fact that the vehicles are performing same as their IC engine vehicles or better, giving them consistent, reliable performance, also makes it very interesting. And that's why there's more adoption happening right now, which now allows for a lot better business opportunities.
Right. And talking about those business opportunities, Mr. Mishra, if I may come to you now, could you give us a brief outlook about, what sort of different business models we are going to be seeing shaping up over the next few years with electric two-wheelers?
So I think obviously the individual consumer is going to move to electric two-wheelers. I think first of all, congratulations to our panelists, and very nice bike, which I see.
Thank you.
And it is fantastic. You did 27,000, because this is something very important. What you saw on the road in last 1 month, that doesn't help consumer confidence.
Yeah.
We have seen this story earlier with Tata Nano. So unless we get over it, otherwise any amount of meeting Mr. Gadkari and putting the tweets and talking about mega factories is not going to work out. Indian consumer is very discerning. You don't provide the high quality product, you're not going to sell it. It has to be very high quality and reasonably priced. Our good friends in industry, the manufacturing, they all went with super bikes. India does not run on super bikes. The biggest selling bikes are still 100 to 150 cc, correct, in IC engines. In India, still 75% plus sales are happening of low speed electric vehicle. And when these companies came with this idea of 10-minute grocery delivery, which to me is a gimmick. I mean, everything which works in the US is not going to work in India, shouldn't be working. Why the hell I need my grocery delivered in 10 minutes? I mean, the cooking takes somebody, if anybody wants just in time this delivery. I mean, do you want haldi to be coming to your house when your sabji is on the stove? No, correct? So this 10-minute delivery, even if it is support, and then all the police staff and traffic police and everybody is busy, man. I mean, if you're going to do 10-minute delivery on a super bike, which is sane, I mean, you're going to have some people falling on the road. It's not going to happen very easy. So I think these are the factors which both the industry, whether it is OEMs, manufacturing, as well as the users need to think. What India, and then of course, people came up that, no, don't worry, anywhere average speed is only 20 kilometers. So I'm not going to hit anybody. Of course, the average speed is 20 kilometers, but highest speed could be 80 kilometers. Now, if you really believe in 20 kilometers, why not go for low speed electric vehicles, which costs half the money, does the job, correct? I mean, any gig economy worker is not there for racing. And if his speed itself is 25 kilometers, you cannot penalize him because he took 12 minutes instead of 10 minutes. So I think first is very important. Industry needs to understand both these deliveries companies as well as the people who supply vehicles to them, that be realistic. If your average speed is going to be 20 kilometers, why buy a bike which costs you 1 lakh and goes 120 kilometers? No, it's not needed. It's a utility vehicle. There is one segment. And I think that should be low speed electric vehicles. Government has a very nice norms. It goes 25 kilometers. That's what, I mean, for example, Yulu uses. No registration, no helmet, no driving license. So security guard who never ever had a bike, he potentially has an opportunity to now go from 12,000 rupees to 24,000 rupees per month. So you are doing a great social service by providing an opportunity to somebody. And by the way, only 1% of women in this country have license, correct? And the people who are having licenses, maybe women are not so healthy and not so well-built men cannot handle a bigger bike. plus load on it. So I think that's one. We, I think, need to focus on low speed electric vehicles, and government should bring some regulations on it. Second, I think the industry primarily needs to be told by the government and themselves. One is, of course, the push factor, which is your cost of total ownership cost, as well as petrol pricing and all. Second, why government should not mandate like Delhi has done it. So right now it is only a policy is not being implemented, that every year mandatorily 20% of delivery, 20% of Ola and Uber has to be electric. And 20% is school buses. But school buses are another regulated sector. Taxi is a regulated sector. Delivery can be a regulated sector. There, the government should say over 5 years, India is going to go 100% electric, and not over 5 years. When we say 5 years, we should say every year 20%. Otherwise, we say, okay, fine. After 4 years, 9 months, I'm going to get 100% electric. Nobody will go then say, can you please increase it by 5 more years? You should say in 5 years. You say that every year 20%. Prove it. Correct? That's how, then what happens, then people like Ranjita can make X number of bikes because they know the 15 million gig economy workers, 20% are going to go electric. How many bikes I need to make? Okay. Today, they are just going and raising money and hoping I'll make 1 lakh and hopefully 99,000 will sell. Correct? Then Zip can decide how many he wants to put in Gurgaon because Gurgaon has these many delivery executives. Correct? Then it becomes much easier. Today, suppose petrol comes at 60 rupees. Again, you go in a TZ. The government has come with a battery swapping policy. Luckily, just now, actually, before your call, the policy came out.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy they did not go crazy over the policy, because earlier they were almost going to define that what plug, what connector, come on, this industry is just evolving. If the government knew everything, and we don't make anything in this country by that, starting from battery cells to nothing is made, and you are going to set a standard based on somebody's recommendation. Is it the best standard? We don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe we'll know over 2-3 years. So bring standardization, but also give opportunity for innovation. So I think these 2-3 things, if we do, I think we will reach a nice equilibrium and in an orderly fashion.
Right.
Otherwise, you will see what you saw in last 2 months, and the government will call and DRDO will come in and they will create, when the government starts regulating, you'll go crazy.
Right.
Right. And once it's regulated, it is impossible to unregulate.
Right. I think, Mr. Mishra, I would like to disagree with you. You said that who needs haldi while you're cooking. I think a lot of us who cook here might want to argue with you on that.
Well, do you want in 10 minutes, or you're okay with 12.5 minutes?
Yeah, so even that's fine. But yeah, you do need it sometimes. So before I take it to
10 minutes, don't get it 10 minutes. Maybe 20 minutes is good enough so that there are less accidents on the road.
Right. No, you're absolutely right on the safety aspect of it. But before I go to Ms. Kaur, Akash, would you want to respond to what Mr. Mishra has said, in terms of the low speed application, the application of low speed two-wheelers in these sort of, applications when we're talking about grocery deliveries or all these, different business models that we're seeing today?
Yeah. So while I agree with Mr. Mishra that a 10-minute can easily be a 15-20 minute, and that still makes a lot of sense from the consumer point of view.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. But on the same contours, when we talk about low speed versus high speed, I think low speed has no problems. But the only problem that has happened with the low speed bike ecosystem, because it's a little unregulated, because there's no RTO registration, there's a lot of wrong selling and poor quality work which has been done by the industry. Right. And that if government could have regulated better, because what has happened, everyone who was building spare parts, everyone who was thinking that EVs I want to get into, they went to our nearby partner country. They imported kits and they started, building those bikes without doing any QC, without knowing what is the Indian need, what are the Indian road conditions, what are the Indian battery conditions that are needed. And people started assembling them. They started bringing batteries from there without, checking whether they have the real nickel strips or, they are just loosely packed batteries. And they're just, and which is what can lead to major chaos before we build this big industry, which is going to be the next, largest mobility movement across the world, right? What IC engine industry built over 100 years, we would have to do within electric within 15 to 20 years, right? But yes, that's where I think a FAME policy or a high-speed vehicle approval process is slightly tighter. And if government could solve that, I think the best OEMs will come forward with the low speed. And I would say that Mr. Mishra's point is valid, that low speed, there's no subsidy. And if government gives subsidy, I think that can, if well regulated, then it can pick another trajectory of EVs, right? We as a business decided to go purely high speed because, we decided that let's work with the best quality product. Let's work with the best OEM in the country, and let's utilize all the subsidies that the government is, doling out. Why not we become the, users of it when we want to deploy 100,000 bikes, right? So that's the way that we kind of pivoted about a year back. Earlier, we were also using a few of low speeds. But, on the delivery aspect, yes, even the 10-minute promise is running at 17, 18 minutes only.
Yeah.
And there, it's not, again, about speed. It's more about how close the warehouses are near the cities or the consumers, how, well the packaging time is, right? How quickly the order has been given to the delivery boy. And then it's about riding, at a certain speed on the city. I'm sure none of the delivery boys need a speed beyond 45, 50 on any day. That I totally agree with.
Right. Dr. Kaur, would you want to add your thoughts to this?
Yes, sure, Mayank. So I agree with actually all three of them. So when we started our journey on making and designing our battery management systems, designing good batteries and swap solutions around that, I mean, we saw the very first challenge that was there. And in fact, I would say the challenge as well as the opportunity, and that is why the company Esmeto is also existing. So we saw everything coming from it, everything getting imported, right? And without really much of an understanding that what is the Indian requirement, what should go into the system, what is the input available, and what is the output expected. So we need to be very practical in understanding that what is it that the consumer is asking for. And whichever models, whatever products are out, there has to be the first priority that is there is you cannot compromise on safety. So safety becomes the first priority. And whenever we are talking about the safety part of it, be it a low vehicle, low speed vehicle, high speed vehicle, a bike or a scooter or a smaller two-wheeler, all these batteries need to be designed very carefully because it is not lying at a corner in a house or outside somewhere used as an energy storage system. So the BMS meant for that kind of an application versus what we require as BMS into the electric vehicle are very different. I mean, not only their usage pattern, their charge-discharge profiles, but their operating conditions itself, right? So the kind of the environments that we are in that required a huge kind of concentration on designing and developing the right products. So understanding that part of it, and that comes when I say that understanding that part, it involves what is the input, as like I said, that what is the kind of the cells that we are going to use. Now it's the journey, the whole of this journey about the battery management system or about the battery start from the cell. Unfortunately, we do not have anyone who's producing these cells right now in the country, but still we have lots and lots of inputs and many countries who are manufacturing the cells of various types in the lithium-ion batteries. Now, which is the one that is more apt and which is the one that you should be using given the temperatures of the country, given the profiles of the country, and what is it that is expected by the OEM. The OEM can ask for that he needs 500 cycles, he needs 1,000 cycles, or need 3,000 cycles. For keeping that in view and seeing that whatever is your range of temperatures, because largely wherever electrification has happened, those countries are cooler countries. And when we are talking about tropical countries, not many places where electrification has happened. So India has its own challenges. And the challenge, the first stage is in the designing challenge itself. So when we started to design, we realized that really not many products that are available right? So almost about, I mean, I've spent almost about 8 years into designing it of the BMS and the battery packs and put up all those things together. And when we say designing or developing those modules or developing those packs, it is actually very cross-functional. You cannot have only electrical engineers working on it. You require mechanical engineers, you require thermal engineers, you require packaging engineers, you require safety people. So it is a combination of all cross-functional domain expertise that is needed to design safer batteries, at the same time batteries that can perform better. The same batteries, once you put in your algorithms, gives you extended life of the batteries, and if not extended, to the best that they give you the results accurately. This is my capacity left. This is the range the battery is going to give, irrespective of its age. Because right now, if you see, I mean, very big challenge that we have apart from the safety is that whatever the battery shows after 6 months or 1 year usage of the battery in the range, it doesn't really give you the same range. Right. So those are a few challenges in the product itself. And when we talk about all these Chinese products that are coming, they have no monitoring enabled. Even if it is there, the way they work, the kind of the cell balancing that they do, it's very, very, very unsafe. So all these things have to be kind of clubbed together. Cell type, to the designing of the batteries, to thermal engineering, cell balancing, overall whole of this combination to give out a product which is actually a good engineered product to make the vehicles safer and performing better.
Right. I'll come to you, Ranjita, and I'll throw a question which has come from our audience. Mr. Ravi Shankar, he's asked a question. We are talking about low speed vehicles or high speed vehicles in these, the delivery model or, all these other business models that we are seeing. So what is the potential acceptance of premium motorcycles, since you are developing one? So how do you see the acceptance of premium motorcycle when you talk about, some of these business ideas going forward?
Mm-hmm. See, there is a demand, I would believe, that's what our experience has been of the last 27,000 kilometers for a well-engineered product, right? The time has come and people are expecting electric vehicles to be a 1:1 replacement of their existing IC engine vehicles. They see the point of EVs, but they want it to be at a minimal lifestyle change or a minimal habit change, right, to their existing habits or their existing behavior or their existing lifestyle, etc. And this is where the importance of a well-engineered product comes in. The engineering has to be the strongest muscle of the body of the company, right? The strongest muscle in the company should be engineering. It's a complicated system. And that's where I believe that the demand will come on its own. There are various business models, even for motorcycles. We build premium performance. We build performance motorcycles, performance electric vehicles at Orha. And there are different business models even for that. So we have a strong B2B line we don't necessarily talk about. We've been doing that for several years now.
You can talk about it.
No. So we do have a very strong B2B business line that we've been doing for the last almost 4 years, right? And apart from that, of course, the motorcycles is our B2C line, and we will continue to have a very strong phase in performance motorcycles. So motorcycles to scooters is about 2:1 in India.
Right.
So if you look at the absolute numbers of it, the motorcycles to scooters is about 2:1, and the numbers are moving. So what was commuter is clearly moving upwards in terms of CC, right? So what you can see a clear trend pre-pandemic, also post-pandemic, also the numbers of the 150 cc, 150 cc coming down, and 150 cc, 200 cc going up. It's a kind of a replacement. People are just shifting.
It's a premiumization of the market that's happening.
Yeah, and that's cool, right? It's nice to see that happening just in terms of the absolute numbers and overall trends in the market itself. So who is going to be there giving them a product that's a 1:1 replacement of an IC vehicle, right? And this is what we aim to do. That's why we hire only bikers in the company. So all employees are bikers. So that's where we see the market evolving. There are other business opportunities that open up just for the sheer fact that it's an electric vehicle. Ecotourism, for example, right? Different types of ecotourism. I can elaborate, and go on about it, but whole different new opportunities come up just with motorcycles and what you can do with that, right? Yeah, it's an interesting space to be, and our last experience of this world record attempt has just opened our eyes completely on how aware the country is about electric vehicles and what sort of opportunities we have around that.
That's a great example, Ranjita. Ecotourism. I think even we at Autocar, we've done some of these. I mean, our sister publication, Autocar India, they've gone into some of the Gir forests or some of these wildlife sanctuaries in an EV. So I think going forward, there is a lot of potential in this space, the ecotourism, like you rightly mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one example. I can think of several more, but yeah, I mean, it's clearly just one of those. Like, imagine if Manali right now, they do not allow petrol vehicles anymore, right? Up the Rohtang Pass. So
yeah, maybe just added to Ranjita's point, not only on the EVs, on the two-wheeler side, if you look at the tourism sector, I mean, in the boats, so the electric boats, I mean, you see Ganges or anywhere in Kerala, the deep waters or the backwaters where you go, the most irritating thing in the entire beautiful journey is the smell and the voice of
the diesel fumes.
Right? And the pollution that it creates. So that is again one very interesting area to actually explore and to help make our climate and the tourism journey also better. So yeah, maybe electric boats next.
Right, why not? So Akash, I'll come to you. Telematics or software is also one of the key enablers if we are talking about all these new business opportunities. So if you could, explain a little bit more about how companies like yours are kind of leveraging that overall telematics and the software power to drive, to tap opportunities with electric.
Yeah, that's very, very critical. And, so for any fleet operator, if you are managing a fleet beyond even 200, you need to manage it with technology. Otherwise, you can fail, right? It's like running a shop without, any software. So telematics really, from the EV perspective, is also very, very critical because here it's a tech-enabled product. There is a battery, right, which has voltage, which has current, and which has temperature, which is flowing down. And those data points are actually very, very valuable for you to optimize, and capitalize more of your asset. The entire maintenance is something which is very, very new. The country is looking at these new products, new electric vehicles, but nobody knows how to maintain them, right? And if you can build your products and softwares to do better fleet maintenance, fleet management, predictive maintenance, right? That's where technology and software plays a huge role. The telematics also helps in knowing where your product is, how to use it through the app rather than operating with keys. It's better to operate it through technology and backend with having motor locks, theft alarms, location, geofencing, bunch of these features which are very, very critical to build a scaled business. So frankly, we have seen bunch of players in the last 12 to 18 months try to deploy vehicles in multiple areas, do last mile deliveries. But one thing which separates a scaled player versus anyone else is this tracking and technology and understanding how your asset can be better utilized between multiple people during the day or between multiple businesses as their peaks hit, and hence so one is the entire telematic side of things. And then the second part is the entire data sciences, which is how you're utilizing all this data, which is coming out from your bikes, from your batteries, from the locations, from the drivers, and how you can cross-pollinate them to predictively use for better utilization of your assets, right? And that's where we have kind of used quite a lot of this tech, and we would love to continue to explore, work with more players who are bringing more innovations. Like recently, we also are looking at tire pressure, right? Because in an electric vehicle, if the tire pressure is full, then you're able to drive more. The mileage is better versus having lesser. So TPMS and bunch of interesting solutions.
Right. Mr. Mishra, you are also, I mean, in that same space, as Akash is in. So, I mean, the role of telematics in this overall, journey, and how do you see it going forward, in helping you scale your business even further?
I think Akash has touched very important points. I think Yulu from very beginning, when we started in 2017, 2018, the country did not have any EV. And Akash rightly said that, especially in low speed, people just bought some kit from some country and just put it together. So that's why we decided to make our own bikes. We are not a manufacturer, but actually the whole bike is designed by Yulu from scratch and being assembled and, part put together by Bajaj, and which is by far the most credible player in the country. And despite government, and I think government made a big blunder, which was under the pressure of some OEMs, that they removed low speed from FAME scheme in FAME 2. FAME 1, it was included. Had the government kept it there, unnecessary fly-by-night operator would have not come in. And registration with RTO is not the only way to maintain and manage the quality. Correct? Mm-hmm. If it's a fleet operator, we are more responsible than OEM. Correct? Right. You could deal with the fleet operators, and because we have in our best interest to run the fleet in a manner. I mean, Yulu has around 20,000 bikes. We are almost the largest fleet in the country. It's in our best interest that we have the best bike. So despite no government oversight, despite there are no standards in the country, we have been very lucky that, and I think we have really taken care, and somebody mentioned every battery is from China. Our cells are not from China. We are getting cells from one of the best in Japan, who actually don't give to Indians because our scales are so small and their supplies are so tight, and we managed to get it. So I think it's very important. It is incumbent upon the industry that we don't build a lousy product. And most of the fire which you saw is not low-speed vehicle, by the way. All these are high-speed vehicles. So, I mean, Akash did mention that low-speed vehicles was a quality issue. Actually, quality issue were primarily noticed. And there's, of course, high-profile companies in the mid-speed and high-speed vehicles. So that's number one. Now, as for telematics, I think very clearly, if you don't know, if your bike is not used, enough number of times a day in a fleet, you're not going to make money. In fact, there is telematics to the extent if our bike is not more than 5 meters away from where it should be, which is called Yulu zones, we will not allow the ride to end. So you cannot end a ride if the bike is not kept there. If bike is fallen, we know, because there is a gyrometer there. We have a huge data science team. I think we have engineers from the best institute who are doing AI and data analytics only. We are never going to manufacture the bike on our own. We'll use the best of the breed to manufacture them. But IoT is fully designed by you in-house. And this IoT is now being even supplied to the other industry players. And IoT, both for and BMS is designed by us. Connector is designed by us. The IoT for the bike and IoT for the battery is designed by us. Every battery is tagged. What standards came out today in the NITI recommendation? Yeah. Yes, Yulu had done it from the day one. Otherwise, we'll not make money. And we made money in this business. I think I want to explain to everybody. From the day one, Yulu has been making money. On every ride, we make money. So this is something which, if you do not invest in this, and that's why only few companies, I mean, anybody can go and buy 200 bikes and put it there. But as Akash rightly put, if you are not able to scale and not make money on every ride, you will not be able to sustain it. Correct? So I think from that point, telematics is a very small part of it. Relocation, rebalancing, swapping of the bike, swapping of the battery, the health of the battery, correct? Preventive maintenance. It's like a whole, 9 yards. So it's a very complicated business. It is not for the faint-hearted. If you have 20 crore in the bank and you want to get in the business, and that's only 20 crore you have, please don't get into business, because very soon you lose 20 crores. Unless you have 200 crores and have a pipeline of getting 2,000 crores, you will not become a scale player in this country. I don't want to scare, but this is a reality of life, because electric bikes seem so simple. One drivetrain, one motor, and one IoT, one battery, and car is ready, bike is ready. No, that's not true. So this is something which is very serious, and that's why world has only few dominant players. Why America, such huge economy, has only Tesla of any significant. Others are there. The big IC engines cannot, cars can't do it into this. So I think it's a very interesting. But I want India to lead in this EV, because this is one sunrise industry where we can truly lead. Now the government has also given this PLI scheme for the 40 gigawatt hour of battery capacity, and we should have done it 10 years ago. Today, China has monopoly and almost can exercise control where they can choke you.
Exactly.
It's a geopolitical tool. Tomorrow, if China wants to stop Indian EV industry, it can do it.
Right.
Japan doesn't have the capacity. Japan cannot give it for its own. South Korea doesn't have it. They have taken over the mines, starting from Chile to South Africa to Rwanda. Everywhere they control the mine.
Yeah.
So we have to completely change the chemistry. If we go with the current chemistry, I think China has monopoly, and they are not our best friends. So
Right.
this is something which India needs to. There's a larger picture rather than swapping policy, connector, and power. And this is a very trivial stuff. I think if India really wants to be a major player in this, we need to think at that level, and that's where some of us which get invited and asked by the government to advise. That's what we advise. Please don't play this game if you can't be the dominant player, and today you cannot be. We do nothing. We are simply the consumer and buyer. The more we buy, more money we give to outsiders. That's my thing. I'm now not putting the hat of the Yulu co-founder. I'm putting the hat as an Indian.
Right.
If we really want to, if a 1.4 billion people country wants to be a leader in electric industry, we will consume the global resources.
Right.
And where are they? We don't have them. So that's my real worry.
Sure. I'll take that to Mr. Dr. Kaur. I want to switch topics also to, this policy, the draft policy. It has just come in. I'm not sure, everyone has got the time to really go through it in detail. But how do you think a policy intervention from the government is going to help the overall interoperability, that we're talking about when we actually look into, tapping potential with electric vehicles into these various different business models?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Mayank. I have not actually gone through the policy in detail as of now, but still to comment on it, policy should be welcomed by all. The problem associated with that is that still the standards are not out. So, and standardization is a very complicated subject in itself without knowing that all the types of vehicles that are existing, what will be a fit all kind of an arrangement that one has to do. So though I had been also chairing this committee on standardization for low EV swappable batteries and the swapping solution around, but maybe being in that position had been knowing that what are the challenges for standardizing in the field. Now, without standardization, introduction of the policy, and then making probably standardized standards to align to that policy, that in itself is one of the challenges that we all need to resolve. So, at the time when the market is very nascent, the products are evolving at all stages. Right from the again, I would say cell to the final products, be it the battery, motor, controller, chargers, the infrastructure, the types of the vehicles, everything is evolving, and we have not yet seen that the type of the vehicles that are getting proliferated, the types of the components that would be getting adopted, and their quality. So all those things have to be proven. However, at the same time, when we see for the policy, since this was existing, or the FAME subsidies and all things were available for the charging infrastructure, this was very much needed for the swapping infrastructure as well. So policy to promote the infrastructure, I think it is a great move, and this was needed. And we all know, with the two-wheeler kind of the segment that we have, the kind of the volumes that we have in the market, more than the charging infrastructure, which worldwide has been showing not more than 16% of the max utilization that has happened overall globally, and this number is coming from the countries like Norwegian country or Western countries where the adoption has been huge. And that is the utilization rate for the public infrastructure. And now India, which is not that big or that rich a country, to put up that kind of an infrastructure is probably not as much of useful this thing, apart from, yes, making people very comfortable that they have the chargers available wherever are needed. But for commercial segments, for deliveries, last mile mobility, and all these things that we are talking about, it is probably the swapping that would be ruling in this area, and that is where the policy was needed. Now, there were a number of questions that are addressed. The how part of it, I'm not really sure, not dig deep into the policy yet, but a number of things like the challenges that are involved. So what is solved inside that is that who would be receiving that subsidy? So who would be helped and who would be actually responsible? So as of today, there is nobody who is responsible for providing that kind of an infrastructure, maintaining that infrastructure, monitoring that infrastructure, and be held accountable. So any incidents happen, we don't know it is a fault of the vehicle. Is it a fault of the battery manufacturer? Is it the fault of the user? Is it the fault of the charger? Where is what happening? So when we talk about this policy, when it says that it will be all monitored, this is a very good move where you can actually see that what has been the usage pattern, what has been the behavior, who has been using what, and everything is getting monitored. And if you would require a subsidy, you would have to say that, yes, this is being monitored. This is a safe thing to be done. So all these things probably compiled together, it's a good move by the government.
Right. That's very well explained, Dr. Kaur, in very simplified terms as well. I think our audience would really, these would have really helped our audience in terms of understanding this whole, the policy side of the things when it comes to the charging infrastructure. Ranjita, I'll come to you. Being in this space, you're developing a product. So do you also feel that interoperability is kind of an issue? And I'll also take a question from Mr. Siddesh Chaudhary. He also asked this, for the better utilization of the product itself, do you think that there should be a commonality of charging standards as well as the battery going forward?
Standards is good. Standardization may not be. Okay, let me explain that a bit. OEMs, whether battery OEMs or vehicle OEMs, have a lot of their competitive advantage coming in from their engineering, right? How better, safer, better performing, more range, more power, etc. they are able to put in their vehicle. And at such an early stage of the industry, I think defining that this is the cube and this is what this cube should do, or this is the limit on what this cube should do, may not be such a great idea. Whereas, for example, saying that, hey, this is the policy. So just like we came up with the policy on the swapping today, I think a couple of weeks ago, we were listening about the fast charging policy, which also is a very, very positive move. Here is the policy on fast charging. This is the type of communication that needs to happen. The battery pack needs to have a communication. The charging system needs to have a communication. This is good, right? This part of it is good. That is what we mean by standards, that the charging system and the battery pack system should both have CAN communication, so that incidences like, say, overcharging or over voltage or these kind of issues are avoided at the source itself, right? Insisting that there has to be a certain minimum safety level, that the BMS has to, or there are certain redundancies in the safeties that you build in your engineering, right? This is good. This part of it is good. And like I said, right, good engineering, there is no excuse for good engineering. You have to put in the effort, because people, what Mishra sir was saying about, it's not just putting a motor controller and a battery together on a frame. It's a very complicated system. The Mantis itself has an equivalent of, I think, 4 computers on it, which all talk to each other, which are all doing a lot of work to ensure that the performance is always there. It's always tuned to give you a very equivalent to a 300cc motorcycle, right? There are like 4 computers sitting on that, talking to each other, right? But the same thing needs to happen in terms of that. And there are lots of many variables. So what should be insisted on is a certain minimum level of safety, and that good engineering doesn't have any excuse, right? That should be there. But saying that this is the area, this is the volume, that's all, may not be a good way. But what's good is how the policy is moving. This is the fast charging standard. This is the swapping standard, right? This is what is minimum expected. And above this, if you go, good for you.
Right. Akash, I'll come to
can
you.
I top it up on that since, sorry, Akash. Like Ranjita was mentioning that there has to be minimum standards.
Yeah.
So if we talk about charging standards, as you were mentioning, India has anyway adopted the international standards that were available for charging infrastructure.
Absolutely.
When it came to so when it came to the swapping infrastructure, while we are defining it, like Mr. Chetan Mani earlier was mentioning, that why not to lead in some of the areas, and that is what we are trying to do. As of today, it's I think only Singapore and no other country where the standards for the swapping has been released. So it's a very, very good area where we know that it is a captive demand by our country. And this is our own need, and we are the driving force. And all of us who are talking and all of us who are listening are the ones who need to collaborate together and bring up that standard. And fortunately, we have been working on that standardization. And precisely like what Ranjita mentioned, that when we are proposing a standard, and since we are ourselves in the industry, we know the pains of development design and the further evolution that is coming up. So precisely that is what we are doing, that specify the minimum throughput, that I'll certify you against this particular standard if you fulfill, let's say, for example, I say 12 kgs max per module. When I say 12 kgs, I don't limit that how much of energy you should put in. I say minimum it should be whatever 1.3 kilowatt hour, but it could be maximized. So tomorrow I have a chemistry which is giving you much more higher, much better energy density. So that energy density should be packable into that weight and volume. But you should not be limiting. You should not be saying that this is it that you have to follow. You have to say this is the minimum that you should be following. And similarly on all different parameters, on energy density, on volumetric densities, and on performances, only specifying what is the communication that you need to have, because without standardizing the communication, you cannot really have the interoperability. Not only talking about the operator to operator interoperability. So for example, if I say that SMITO's infrastructure is compatible with Sun Mobility or anyone or whosoever is setting up that infrastructure, that becomes secondary. But the first level of interoperability comes at the assets itself. So we have batteries as an asset. So any battery which is certified as a swappable battery, it is interoperable among all the vehicles that are there. So that is a level of interoperability first that we have to attain. So it is batteries, it is vehicles also, and it is to the connector and all that, and it will be evolving. So we have to make sure that there is enough room for innovation, enough room for creativity. And that's how the standardization on the swapping is something that we are leading.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, there's also a good thought on
Yeah.
what will happen at the end of, say, you doing a swapping infrastructure and you have certain batteries which are at their 1,500th life cycle, and some other batteries which are at their 20th.
Yeah. So so even to top it up on that, so
right?
like what we do, that we like Akash was also mentioning. So what we do is we monitor each battery, right, to the cell level, see that what is happening from the safety point of view, see it on the capacities accuracies point of view, and do our predictive algorithms based upon the cell model, based upon our algorithm that is there on BMS, and based upon the data that you have it on the cloud. So it is a combination of whole of it that give you a good predictive models on both on the safety performance predictions. So that's what we do as a technology where we would be happy to collaborate with anyone and everyone who can utilize our platform, plug it in, and see that what it goes into as a system. Yeah. So not everyone, I mean, all of you, Yulu, yourself, Ranjita and Akash, you are front-facing the clients. And for me, it is like I'm not front-facing the clients. I'm running back-end, right? So I ride on the technology. So we become B2B kind of a player where we plug into everyone. So by saying this, what I want to say is that this is a time and era where there is scope for everyone. There's scope for technologists, there's scope for people who are good in operations, people who are good in business. So services, it's a huge industry and a huge scope to move forward.
Right. No, wonderful, Dr. Kaur. I think I can take those as your closing comments from your side already. But before I move to Akash, Akash, like how Dr. Kaur was just mentioning, as a service provider, do you think that these the standardization of the battery technology or the charging infrastructure is going to remove a lot of restrictions for you as a service provider when you talk about scaling your business even further?
Yes, so for a fleet operator who's basically ensuring that fleet is up and running, I think it's a boon. It's gonna be definitely a boon, because it's like what Dr. Kaur is saying, that they build the Indus Stars, and then the Airtel, Vodafone, Idea, they build the user and their retention and their pricing structures. It's almost like a telco example, a crude example, having spent 5 years in telco, I could give. But yeah, I think that's where the industry wants to be, right? Where there are things which are standardized. And, like fuel has done it, obviously, over ages, that now you go to a BPCL or an IOCL, or, you go anywhere, you don't worry, your cars, can take all of that. But I think with batteries, it's going to be a lot more tricky, because it's, again, very new. There is someone else's motor, someone else's controller, and then there's a battery with a BMS, and then there's a swapping system which is reading all that. So it's going to be highly tricky to ensure, and it has to be either like an ISI mark kind of a thing that the government will have to build, that every battery which is built for swapping, every swapping system which is built, and every vehicle which is getting fitted into, today ARAI takes about 4 months to approve one bike with one battery. Now, when we are talking about one bike with 3 different batteries and 2 different swapping stations, we are talking about an year to get an approval of one bike with this kind of a structure, right? So either the government has to really work towards creating an infrastructure or an approval authority which is robust enough to ensure these multiple different variants are, attuned and tested and, given a hallmark or whatever, which is going to be my only fear is, while I am all for, the standardization, my only fear is that this should not slow down the process of growth. If the process of growth, continues the way it is, because anyways, we are all hampered with supply chain issues, battery issues, and swapping will be a boon, but it should not hamper all the startups which are working towards this.
Right. I get your point. Mr. Mishra, if you have anything to add to this, and also I want to ask you another question, which is about collaborations. With Yulu, we can already see some, a level of collaboration already. You are designing the product and it is being manufactured by a kind of a established legacy player, which is a major in the two-wheeler space. So how do you see the overall collaborations also, shaping up in this electric two-wheeler space in future?
I think I don't want to dampen the spirit with which the government and the industry player, some of them are trying to do the standardization of swapping policy. But let me assure you, and I know it from direct conversation, OEMs don't like it. OEMs do not want the big brotherly attitude from the government telling what plug, and because see, that's their USP. I am making my bike, which is very efficient because I'm using certain battery management system. I'm using certain communication protocols and things like that. And listen, if I'm going to a fleet operator, maybe Zip or Yulu, Yulu already has, we do 3 million battery swaps, correct? Already, we've been doing for a year and a half. We have mega charging stations where these are warehouses in industrial estates where at any time 500 to 1,000 batteries are being charged, to Max station, which is a metro station where at one time around 100 batteries are being charged, correct? Now, if I am a fleet operator, I am the one who is maximum user of this swapping facility. And I'm a fleet operator, I can do on my own. So they're saying, listen, you are unnecessarily bugging me with this. I don't want this. But then the government says, oh, listen, but then Ranjita's bike, a guy buys his bike and he wants to swap. But let me tell you, Ranjita's bike is going to be charged in the house. Because if I am a guy who's going to pay 80,000, 1 lakh, I'll certainly have a garage, or maybe I'll take in the lift and go to my apartment where I'll charge it.
Right.
Now, having said that, swapping in the longer term is going to help. But also keep in mind, I buy a bike with a battery which comes with, I suppose, and that battery is of very high standard. Suddenly I go for swapping, and the battery I get there, because somebody's also put a question in this your chat. Oh, if I buy a battery with that, and if I go swap, I get a third-rate battery, what am I going to do? Correct? Either you buy the bike without battery. Then OEM say, well, listen, you are not buying battery from us, you are going to swappable battery, then I can't guarantee for the performance. Correct?
Yeah.
Now, this is not so simple. I truly applaud. And by the way, in the last minute, that's why it got delayed. Last minute, one of the standards which government was really pushing had to be dropped because everybody revolted. He said, what are you trying to do? Don't impose a standard from one company or two companies. We're not going to do it. And if OEM are not on board, you're not going to be able to do it. If I don't make a bike which is swappable, you can do whatever you want. Government, luckily in democracy, you can't dictate. So it is a very important that, but by the way, I'm very happy. I had an opportunity. My team members have just put together a little summary of what the policy came. So I had gone through it. Very nice. I must congratulate that all the worrying part was removed, which was removed, I think, in the last 3 days, because the 3 days ago, what I heard wasn't what I saw today. Very good. It is not prescriptive. It is collaborative. Like, Madam Kaur said that, okay, fine, you can pack more energy, but keep it below 12 kilos, for example. Why 12 kilos? Because anything above 12 kilos, you'll have to go to gym to lift it. And these are human beings, because India robots changing this batteries will be very, very long time. Humans can't lift to 20 kilo battery like 200 times a day, correct? Those are standard things, the plugs. Anyway, we have, standardized on certain aspects, charging standard global. So I think from that point of view, government trying to nudge is a good thing. Government trying to push will backfire. This is my, and I think government is being very sensible about it. I must, and of course there will be push and pull, like some OEMs got lobbied and got, low speed vehicles removed from FAME. Some OEMs were trying to push their standards, at least two we heard. Luckily, they didn't succeed. Correct? India should not be dictated by a standard which is, good for somebody. India will figure out its own standard, which I think Indian OEMs have to be on board. This is very important. And unfortunately, in India, there's no OEM in India of any size or scale or credibility as of today in EV. So if no Indian OEM is credible, then which standard are you talking about? Correct? Why you want to import a standard from China, Japan, or Europe? Let it evolve. Or at least get OEMs on board. By the way, most of the OEMs did not even join these meetings. You may be not aware of it. They refuse to go for these meetings. The big OEMs. And I'm talking big OEMs are the big OEMs who are essentially in IC and have a big plan for the charging. So I think government's intent is very good. India should lead in this swapping, because we think we are almost the only country who are really pushing for swapping, which is a good thing. But swapping will be done by the fleet operators and manufactured by OEMs. Both have to be taken on board.
Right. On that note, Mr. Mishra, thank you so much for your comments. I think we'll just close the discussion right here. We have completely run out of time. And I really hope the audience really enjoyed this entire conversation. We've touched upon a lot of different things here and, discussed the overall potential of, different business models, as well as, discussing the charging infrastructure and the charging infrastructure policy in detail. So thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies, Mr. Mishra, Akash, Ranjita, and Dr. Kaur. Really appreciate your time and really appreciate your valuable comments here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us here.
Ranjita, I need your bike.
Of course, for everyone. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. And with that, we'll move into our next session, which is going to be a series of technical presentations. But before that, I would again like to, thank our sponsors for this event, our presenting partner, Varroc, powered by BASF, technology partner, Matter, and associate partners, Covestro and Celanese. I'll again hand it over to my colleague, Nilesh Wadhwa, for taking us through a couple of presentation sessions. Nilesh, over to you.
Thank you, Mayank, and really, indeed, a very interesting panel discussion we had with old guns and new guns, sharing their views about what they see as a potential for the future of electric two-wheeler industry. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to the next session of the day with Mr. Robin Jacob Joseph, who is a senior manager, market development, battery packaging, Indian subcontinent, technical sales, mobility, India South, Covestro, India. To give a short introduction to Robin before he takes on over the presentation on the subject of engineering plastic solution for reliable battery packs for Indian conditions. Robin is responsible for the market development of battery packaging platform, India subcontinent, and technical sales of engineering plastics for mobility segment. In his role, he is responsible for battery packaging, a platform that enables electric vehicle manufacturers and battery pack manufacturers to mass produce safe, reliable, and efficient batteries to meet the local conditions, which they leverage by using Covestro's global expertise in EV battery packaging solution. Robin is associated with Covestro since 2013 and was initially handling industrial market of the polyurethane business. In 2017, he became part of the engineering plastic business. He's, in terms of his curriculum achievements, he is a polymer engineer and marketer with an industry experience of more than 13 years, spanning across manufacturing, marketing, technical sales, and strategy. With that, Robin, I hand it over to you. And before, as is the drill, ladies and gentlemen, we will be trying and take as many questions as possible after the presentation. Over to you, Robin.
Yeah, thank you. Nilesh, can you hear me? Just to confirm.
Yes, Robin, we can hear you.
Okay, and one more thing. Can you see the background properly, or is it flipped?
No, it's proper. It's proper.
Okay, so we are very new to the
digital platform.
Oh, no, of course not. But to the Zoom, yes.
Okay. So I can see your presentation. Yes, it's in full screen mode.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that kind introduction, Nilesh. So I will not waste any time because we have very limited, the time available. So yes, so this is a very important topic. I've been listening to the panel discussions, especially yesterday. We were talking about a lot of safety aspect from the fire retardancy, from the mechanical strength. How overall battery packages are behaving in Indian conditions. So let me just start by giving an introduction of Covestro for those who are uninitiated. So Covestro was previously known as Bayer Material Science until 2015. So we were hyped off as a separate company afterwards. So we are a German organization with more than 50 production facilities globally. Across the regions wherever we are operating very close to our customers, the major bases. So we are mainly into the businesses of plastics, pre-products, and solutions for various applications, from automotive to electrical to electronics to construction to sports and goods. We are a research-based organization. We have more than 80 years of inventions and ideas to support us. So we majorly operate in the two chemistries of polycarbonate and polyurethanes, both of which were invented by our scientists back in the 1930s, 50s, and later on. So I represent the engineering plastics division of Covestro, which is mainly focusing on the polycarbonate-based chemistry. So as you can see in the screen, so we are spread across the major manufacturing markets. So we have 5 PC polymerization production sites with a combined capacity of around 1.5 million tons of capacity, making us the largest polycarbonate manufacturer in the world. We also have 7 compounding plants very close to our customers, one of which is in India, in Greater Noida, from which we support our customers from the locally compounded materials. Yes. So now, specific to this EV topic, so we are, if you know Covestro is the leaders in polycarbonate when it comes to automotive. And we are also the leaders when it comes to electric and electronics for decades. So before the whole EV has, the EV revolution has come to the forefront. So our engineers and researchers have been working on the technologies which will enable the electric mobility. So we have quite perfected the solutions. So as you can see that we are there in battery packaging, power electronics. We have ways to manage heat. We have enabled the connected vehicles, and also in telemetrics and battery packaging. We have sensor transparent materials. We also have structures which will enable the safety of battery packages during a crash as such. So specifically today we are focusing on battery packaging. So let me just give an overview. So we have solutions, Covestro has solutions for all the form factors, major form factors such as cylindrical, pouch, and prismatics. And we offer, our materials can be used for cell holders, modules, and cooling devices. We will come to them in the upcoming slides. Some of the case studies, just to give you a gist of it, how our materials are being used. So as you can see, here we have showcased small battery packages from half kilowatt hour to large from 75 kilowatt hour. So across 4-wheelers, trucks, and two-wheelers, and swappable packs. So the applications are across the different segments. So these are some of the projects which we can showcase. We are allowed to showcase. But we also operate widely in India, other than the other global brands. Most of your favorite brands in India also uses our materials for the cell holders and battery packaging. So as you can see in my background, so we will be fully circular. So we, as an organization, strives to become fully circular in the years to come. So we have a target to be carbon neutral by 2035, and we have many of the production already moving towards that direction. Recently, we have launched the carbon neutral polycarbonate for the first ever in the world. In that aspect, we also always suggest or recommend our customers also to enable circularity from their designs. So we would want you to reduce the consumption of materials from be it polymers directly or any kind of materials, and also even if it is the feedstock or the general the fossil fuels. We should also encourage you to design for extended use of your intended product. If you're making a battery package, it should withstand for so many years. Even after the primary use, it should also be used for the secondary use as some storage device. So the design should be in such a way that it is used for in the longer period of time. And then the design should also be convenient for recycle after the end of life. So it's important that the recyclable materials are being used, similar kind of materials are used in the design, and even the joining techniques should not, let's say, contaminate the whole whole pack during the recycling. So we have certain techniques also which will enable this kind of the reducing the adhesives and such. Now, as you are aware, yesterday I was seeing some of the comments. So we have seen that people are already aware that the material of choice for battery packaging is polycarbonate and ABS blend, PC-ABS. In some cases, PC, yes. So we just wanted to give for a non-technical people or who are not directly involved in the material side that how polycarbonate, why Covestro promotes the polycarbonate. It is not because of the polycarbonate aspect of it, because it is an amorphous material. As you can see in the graph, as compared to semi-crystalline materials, the amorphous materials, for example, some of our grades are mentioned here. So they have a storage modulus, intact until up to from around 100 degrees Celsius, whereas these semi-crystalline materials lose the storage modulus from around 20, 30, 40 degrees, which is not ideal for a battery pack, especially in Indian conditions. So it is very important that when you're choosing a material for battery packaging part, so it is important to consider the nature of the polymer. And if you also look at the other properties of the amorphous materials, high toughness, good heat resistance, fire resistance can be incorporated even up to V0 levels. Polycarbonate is inherently V2 material. Dimensional stability, very important because amorphous material has an isotropic molding shrinkage, post-molding shrinkage, and also when it comes to thermal expansion during charging discharging cycles, so thermal expansion is also isotropic. So it is very important that these matters are considered for the selection. And also we have already talked about sensor transparency for different frequencies when we are talking about connected battery packs or connected vehicles. So some examples. So prismatics not very relevant for a two-wheeler forum because these are usually used for very large packs like the trucks and the buses. But nevertheless, the main requirement for the polymer is the ability to mold in very thin walls and also being molded in very large parts. So we have grades which will enable V0s at 0.75 mm, fire retardancy of the rating even for a thickness of 0.75 mm, and we are also high flow material which can fill for producing very large parts. Pouch modules, again, custom requirements. So the same material cannot be used for all applications. So end plates and tap holders require impact modified PC with fire retardancy. So we have certain grades in that, which also has good VSDs and the RTI values for the specific requirements. Then for cell frames, where these pouches are being held on to the use of plastic, where the high stiffness is required because during the expansion and contraction of the pouches, so it should be able to withstand the rigidity of the whole pack. So we have some mineral filled with FR properties, fire retardant properties up to 0.75 mm. Now the main type of form factor for two-wheeler is always cylindrical module. So as you can see that even in those, we have multiple grades in our portfolio because in each design and each type of battery pack is different. So we have to ensure that the products are well suited, and we also don't have to go overboard with some of the properties because we also have to look into the cost factor. So if you can see on the first is our Waveland FR3010, which is the kind of like the industry standard for as long as you can remember about the electronic and electrical devices. But when it comes to cell holders or for battery packaging, you may need lower wall thicknesses because you have to combine so much of your cells into one limited available space. So you may have to combine so many cells into one pack. So you may need a lower wall thicknesses. So there we have grades which has fire retardancy at very lower wall thicknesses. And for during your mass production, if your production levels are very high, we know that for ensuring IP90, IP67 and all, you do use mechanized the joining techniques. So if you're using UV curable adhesive, so it is necessary that the material used is also comparable or compatible with this. So we have grades which will be transmitting UV rays for required levels to ensure that as well. So we also have the key requirements we have already discussed about high stiffness, flame retardance, dimension stability, low warpage, and heat resistance. And then again, having to be able to manufacture in low wall thicknesses and even at that wall thicknesses, maintaining the mechanical strength. So that's how it is. We also have innovative cooling solutions. So as you can see, we have grades which are compatible with the liquid coolant, which will basically the cooling or innovative, the thermal management is to extend the life of the battery, and also our plastics can be used to improve the design flexibility. So it is very difficult to make the cooling channels in a metal, and also metal manufacturing is, the metal after being manufactured is quite heavy. So that's why you can see in one of the pictures in the bottom of the screen that the cooling channels can be molded in a plastic, and these are recyclable. If you're looking at the LCA the values, so plastics have better LCA values than as compared to mostly used metal, which is aluminum. Then we also have thermally conductive plastics, various types. So these are not, let's just say, they are not drop-in solutions. So this has to be designed from the beginning. For example, if you want to use a thermally conductive material in your existing cell holder application, it may not be viable, but we have to do it from the design stage. So we have a combination of properties. There are grades which are thermally conductive and electrically insulating, with the V0 properties of up to 1.5 mm fire retardancy. Then we also, in some cases, where these heat sinks and all are required. So you have the grades which has quite high thermal conductivity, almost meeting the whole system level conductivity of aluminum, but these are electrically conductive. So it's all about using these products in combination and in the proper processing to ensure the best of the thermal management in our battery packs and other heat removing applications. So just to touch upon, what are the trends in the battery pack design? So beyond the required regulations, for example, in India case, it is AIS 156. So we are all looking at enhanced energy density. That means you have to use the thin walls of molding for your cell holders and such. We have already talked about that. And second is the durability and reliability and harsh environments. Yes, in the AIS 156 or any kind of regulatory requirements, yes, we are doing the shock, vibration, and drop testings, but they are all for that moment, right? So yesterday we were talking, some of the panelists were talking that we have to consider the life of a battery for maybe many years to come. So it is also very important that whatever material we are using for a cell holder or a battery packaging, or the top covers or bottom covers, they should be able to withstand high temperature and high humidity in the UV scenario for a very long time. So that's also another design trend we have come across. Then it's also important to integrate, to have the modularity integrated in the design. So it is also important to have metal insert friendly materials for the integrated design. So we will come to that on one by one on how important those are and some of the learnings which we have had from other markets. Thin wall we have already talked about. So FR, fire retardancy, is very important. So I've been talking about V0 ratings for a while, but V0 is a type of UL, Underwriters Laboratory standard, which we refer for fire retardancy. Of course, if there is a thermal runaway, there is no plastic or metal can support you in that. But the importance is that in case of the small failures that happens, the plastic should not propagate the fire. So it is very important, especially in Indian conditions where moisture and the heat conditions are quite extremes. So it is very important that the material choices are FR. Usually for the regularly used materials, when you're adding FR, the mechanical properties go down. So that's why we always suggest the grades like PC and PCAPS. So whether resistance.
Robin, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We have exactly 2 minutes before the next session. So I request if you can be a bit like an expedite this.
Yes, got it. Yeah. So weather resistant, we have talked about liquid cooler resistance, but something which we have come across with some of the leading global OEMs after spending many years of their packs in the actual environment, they have come to know that the mechanical property of the pack reduced drastically after being in this the outside conditions. So there is something called double 85 standards which have come up in the industry, where the battery pack the material has to withstand for 1,000 hours in 85 degrees Celsius to in 85% relative humidity. As you can see that the normal material drops the mechanical properties, in this case tensile strength around 400 hours and impact strength at around 200 hours. So we have developed certain grades which can withstand. See, 85 degrees and 85% humidity is not very large when we are talking about actual operating conditions of a battery in Indian condition, where the relative humidities are almost in that level. Although this is only for accelerated aging we are talking about. So we have grades which can withstand those conditions. So we would always request our customers to consider these kind of materials, because in India, if you are using it in Chennai, Mumbai, or in Kolkata, the conditions are quite harsh. So it should not be that after 1 year the pack loses its properties. Metal insert friendly, yes. Then again, we have certain grades which can be tested with the glacial acetic acid test, in which the key is that the insert has to be preheated, which in India unfortunately not being done because we are not very familiar with the electronic kind of manufacturing. But we have tested most of our grades to ensure that there are no stress cracking, which is an important part when we are talking about insert molding during that. So we have grades which will enable you for integrated design of your battery pack. So before I stop, I just wanted to notify all the listeners that Covestro is not just a granule seller. So we work alongside the whole value chain. We work with OEMs from the design stage. Many of our Indian OEMs and global OEMs work with the design team of Covestro, and the tier ones during the trial stages, tool making, and also during the mass production with the molders. So we can leverage our expertise, global expertise, and also in the understanding of Indian market in your, improving your products and designs. I would like to stop with one quote, the John Wooden quote. So if you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it again? So it's very crucial, I believe, in Indian scenario, based on whatever information we are getting about the EV industry. And I would like to thank the forum for giving me the opportunity. And you can contact me in this details I have provided here in case of any discussions. So I'm sorry I had to rush a bit because we had very limited time. So I hope I have stopped within the allocated time.
No, not an issue, Robin. I would suggest, in case if you would like to, if you can take some of the questions that are asked in the Q&A box, you could very well take it after this. And with that, I would like to move on to the next session. Once again, I would like to thank you for the detailed presentation. I'm quite sure some of the most of the audience have gained some interesting insight on the world of Covestro.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we go to our next session where we have a technical presentation where I would like to invite Dr. Joachim Flock, who is a program segment manager, electric powertrain at Celanese India. Dr. Flock has over 2 decades of experience with Celanese and has worked on program management and e-mobility, product marketing, application development, automotive, with a strong experience in tribology. He holds a doctorate in tribology of unidirectionally carbon fiber reinforced PEEK composites. As is the drill, ladies and gentlemen, we will try and take the questions pertaining to the time. With that, I hand over to you, Dr. Flock. Dr. Flock.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good.
Would you like to switch on your cam?
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen, but we are unable to see.
Yeah, let me switch to presentation mode. Okay. So thank you for the introducing words. So first of all, let me come to the agenda of my presentation. So first of all, I would like to give you an overview of Celanese itself, followed by how Celanese sees the recent challenges in e-mobility and how those can be translated into requirements for plastic materials in e-mobility. As a part of that, I'd also like to give you an overview of what Celanese, besides single product offerings, is doing to support the market in moving ahead with e-powertrain developments in plastic materials. And in the next chapter, I will show you some application examples, followed by a summary in the end. So starting with Celanese, we are a global company with a headquarters in Dallas, Texas. We are currently employing approximately 7,700 people and had a net sales of approximately 8.5 billion in 2021. Celanese's footprint includes more than 40 manufacturing sites in over 19 countries. So we are really a worldwide company, and we are serving multiple markets with our portfolio. The business is based on 3 major segments, out of which the acetyl chain is the biggest one. But the topic that we are covering today belongs to the engineered materials business, in which, besides automotive applications, we are also serving industrial performance, consumer, but also medical applications. Another area is paints and coatings with products for emulsions, for example. And last but not least, in the 3rd segment, we are dealing with acetate tow. A typical application example for this is cigarette filters. Well, what drives the recent developments in the electric powertrain? For sure, requirement for safety is the top topic, increased range. You also hear very often about it, as well as reduced charging time. This is the most known challenges for the moment. And besides that, for sure, cost reduction is always a topic, as well as sustainable is becoming more and more important. So all these industry imperatives result in various system requirements which have to be met in order to reach these imperatives. So the recent challenge is to translate the requirements resulting from the imperatives in requirements to our performance of plastics. Just as an example, increased safety, for example, can be reached by mitigating thermal propagation in case of a battery cell fire. So as plastics are part of a battery setup, they need to meet several requirements on flame retardancy, for example, but also more general resistance to thermal treatment. As many requirements are very new to the automotive industry, still many specifications are missing or are work in progress. So selecting the right materials can be a real challenge for the engineers here. Yeah? So what are we doing as Celanese? As also my colleague from Covestro said, we are not just a material supplier. We are really aware about the recent challenges in the e-mobility, so we understand our role really as a full service provider, supplying our customers also with technology expertise. And as we are set up globally with expert teams in all 3 regions of the world, as well as manufacturing sites, we can make sure that we deliver the best support in each region of the world. How do we define technology support? For sure, it all starts with experienced application development teams and detailed system knowledge. We have set up an e-mobility program team, which is driving so-called know-how domains, which are characterizing our materials with a focus of its most relevant material properties, like electrical insulation, for example, flame retardancy, thermal conductivity, but also EMI shielding, for example. And besides pure material properties, relevant technologies are developed. Typical example is thermal shock and metal overmolding. This is something that my previous presenter has mentioned as well, which is not just a material property, but which is also highly influenced by factors like part design and processing. So as a result of these know-how domain developments, we are capable of training our customer teams internally in the most effective way to support our customers in selecting the right materials and designing the right way. But also by dealing with these know-how domains, we are capable to identify product gaps and drive new product developments to better meet the industry requirements. So to sum it up, we are focusing not just on material, but also on the application itself and on the technology, and combining all these to support our customers globally the best way we can. On this slide, you can see an overview of our recent product offerings for the automotive e-mobility space. As you can see, we have a really diverse product portfolio, which is covering all kind of standard polymers like polypropylene with our brand name Technoprene, up to high temperature polymers like Fortron polyphenylene sulfide, PPS, or Vectra LCP, Since end of last year, we are now also capable of offering our Santoprene TPV brand, which we acquired end of last year. And with this portfolio, we are really capable of supplying solutions and offer solutions for almost every subsystem in the electric powertrain, like the battery system, the battery cell itself, where ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, for example, plays a big role for cell separators, power electronics, but also the e-motor connectors, but also and thermal management, where we have been historically pretty strong with our high temperature materials. Something that is not mentioned on this slide, which I would like to highlight, we recently signed an agreement to acquire most of the plastic business with DuPont. But as this acquisition is still pending, I can't tell you more about it. We are confident that we will come to a positive end here by the end of the year. This is not mentioned on the slide, so we will position ourselves much stronger in the future also on PA, but also PBT, which we still have. But here the portfolio will definitely grow. Let me come back for a moment to the technology. Here you can see all the know-how domains that Celanese is currently working on, and also which electric powertrain subsystem these know-how domains affect. As you can see, one of the most important, if not the most important topic, is ignition or flame retardancy. It affects almost every subsystem of the overall of the whole electric powertrain. And for that reason, I would like to take a closer look onto this know-how domain and also highlight some examples with products which are flame retardant. This slide here gives you an overview on what we are doing in the area of thermal propagation mitigation. In the first line, for example, you can see flame retardancy. This is a kind of base. Flame retardant tests according to UL 94 are well established, and Celanese can provide a lot of data in this area, including yellow cards for various products, covering standard polymers like polypropylene, as well as many PA and PBT grades, but also high temperature polymers like PPS, as well as LCP. The next line, TGA analysis, can also be pulled to characterize polymers that are subjected to high temperatures for a longer time, but not necessarily being in direct flame contact. Also here, the database is pretty broad. What we can say so far is that LCP, covered by our brand name Vectra and Cyanide, performs best here. And I come to that again a little later with an application example. Very electric powertrain specific, but not yet fully specified, are the external and internal fire tests, which simulate either a gasoline fire or a so-called thermal runaway of a battery cell, both potentially causing for sure most severe failure of the overall electric powertrain system. And we are currently working on these tests with an internal business case, as well as in a joint project where we are cooperating with other companies to mainly determine standardized test methods, but also to characterize some material solutions here. This slide gives you an overview of our recent portfolio of flame retardant polymer grades, not necessarily mentioning the specific grades, but giving a more helicopter view. As you can see, our flame retardant portfolio is extremely broad. It starts on the lower end with polypropylene. It covers polyester, various polyamides, and it ends on the high temperature end with PPA, PPS, and LCP. The flame retardant products can be either offered as halogenated, but also as non-halogenated variants. But PPS and LCP, they are inherently flame retardant. They don't need any flame retardant additivation. This is advantageous if it comes to mechanical properties, for example, because we don't have any influence here. Also interesting to consider is the so-called glow wire ignition temperature. Originally, it comes from the household appliance industry, and it's a relevant property for materials that are used in unattended household appliances like washing machines, for example. So imagine if your battery electric bike or scooter is parked in your garage and is charged while you are absent. In such a case, you could consider it to be an unattended household appliance. So far, already various OEMs have realized that the glow wire ignition temperature could become a relevant requirement for polymer materials used in electric vehicles, especially for parts that are not subjected to open flames, but to hot wires, which is a real scenario if it comes to high power charging, for example. This slide gives you an overview of some TGA results for various vector and LCP grades. Depending on the LCP base polymer, the decomposition temperature can easily exceed 500 degrees C. And this is sometimes a critical temperature, as some parts in a battery still need to provide electrical insulation properties after a heat treatment of 500 degrees C for 5 minutes. TGA results can be pulled to select appropriate materials for such parts. This is a pretty new result. It is a very, very first result of a so-called pyro test, which is simulating a thermal runaway of a battery cell. Such a thermal runaway can create extremely high temperatures caused by gases which are released from the battery at high pressure. And as these temperatures can easily melt away aluminum, the OEMs are looking for layers inside the battery to protect the aluminum casing. In this test, we are shooting on a test specimen with a pyrotechnical device. And on the left side, you can see the results for all short fiber reinforced materials. For your information, all these grades contained flame retardancy additivation, but they failed completely. There was a burn through of the blacks, and in some cases, the black more or less completely melted away. Interestingly, on the right side, you can see material that passed the test. This material is based on a so-called long fiber technology, represented by our Celstron brand name, which offers the advantage of a rigid fiber skeleton, even when the polymer is burned off, and so it prevents the black from burning through. In such a case, the backside temperature of the black is also far lower, so the aluminum casing can be protected from melting away or from burning through. Let me now come to the application examples and start with some introduction to bus bars. A bus bar normally, as you know, is a metal conductor, and it really needs to meet complex requirements. And also, depending on where it's assembled, these requirements can vary. Besides the electrical insulation, overmolded polymers need to provide a high thermal shock resistance. And our recent bus bar insulation solutions cover almost every established polymer group in electric powertrain systems. Due to the fact that thermal shock is highly influenced by the design of the insulation layer, specific engineering expertise is necessary to come up with appropriate material solution. And I would go dig in a little deeper on this topic. Due to the complexity of this application, we have started a very detailed program to characterize the thermal shock performance of our products. And it does not only include the investigation of the neat product performance, but also takes into consideration wall thickness, for example, presence of weld lines, the temperature range the part is subjected to, and also how long and in which way it is subjected to the temperature. Is it real thermal shock, or is it a thermal cycle, for example?
Dr. Fong, I would request if you could come to the conclusion, because we have already run out of time and we are scheduled for our next session.
Okay. So maybe let me finish with one example which I wanted to give you some minutes before. This is a so-called battery cell separator, which is realized in our Vectra LCP E540i. This plate thermally protects neighboring cells from each other in case of a thermal incident. And the material was capable to withstand the customer requirement of a heat treatment of 625 degrees C for 5 minutes. And besides that, due to the fact that it has a very, very high flowability, you can realize thin wall design, and it also offers V0 performance down to 0.4 millimeters. So to finish with a summary, it is really obvious that the electrification of the automotive powertrain is one of the main innovation drivers over the next years. The topic is complex and specifications are not yet fully set. So collaboration with our customers to find appropriate material solution is really key. Besides the broadest portfolio in the market for polymer materials, we can also offer high engineering expertise, CAE capabilities, as well as material and application testing to serve the needs of our customers. With that, I'm at the end. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you, Dr. Flock. I'm pretty sure that most of our audience would have got some deep insights on what Celanese is and what all its offerings are. I would request, in case if you would like to take some of the questions that are already shared in the Q&A box, you may take it while you're at the event. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to invite my colleague Mayank Dhingra to take us forward with the next session. Over to you, Mayank.
Thank you very much, Nilesh. We'll move to the last presentation now for the day. And I would like to invite Mr. Arun Pratap Singh, who is the co-founder and COO of Matter. Mr. Singh has over 25 years of experience in electric vehicles, bus and battery industries. His work entails leading strategy and innovation across business functions, and he has been instrumental in the development of new industrial categories in the EV market, as well as contributed to India's EV policy roadmap. He's an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and IIM Ahmedabad, Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad, and has held management positions at Tata Motors, Epsilon Batteries, and Ectotherm, among others. Mr. Singh is a proponent of equal participation and opportunities, and with more than a decade of experience in electric mobility, he firmly believes that electric is our only choice, and at Matter, the company is developing the right technological innovations to help transform the planet. Mr. Singh, I would like to hand it over to you now. Just one word from my end, we are running a little behind schedule, so I would request if you would, if you could just expedite your presentation a little bit.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, man, for the nice introduction. And can you just give me rights to present? Then I'll just switch on to that.
Yes, you can present it right away.
Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Thank you.
If you could go into the full screen presentation mode, please, sir.
I will.
Yeah, wonderful. Please go ahead.
Hi. So the statement given to me for the presentation is how technology evolution is creating futuristic lithium-ion batteries for the future. So the point is, lithium-ion batteries are not new. They were invented way back in 1970s, and the world has been dabbling and trying to solve this problem for a while. But if you look at electric vehicles, I got into electric vehicles way back in 2008 with then we were using lead acid battery, but it came to success and core with Tesla promoting it, and lithium ion now is seen as something which is driving the change in the electric vehicle industry. So technology is driving the change for tomorrow's mobility and customer experience, which basically what we're trying to say is transitioning happening from the ICE vehicles to electric vehicles. And if you look at the overall industry, the customer has not been getting the experience in terms of improved experience, which he is getting if you look at white goods or other industries, or laptops, other places. The experience of the customer has improved, but if you look at automotive, specifically two-wheelers, that experience has not changed.
But what is driving this change? The key trends are rapid urbanization, government support, India's growth as manufacturing hub, and sustainability. Sustainability is very critical because we can see what is happening to our environment. And I don't think we want to leave this world bad than what we took from the previous generation. So with that intent, I think electric mobility is the only option the humanity has today. What do we need? We basically need good set of energy storage devices, which today is lithium-ion battery packs. And when you look at a lithium-ion battery pack, since I come from the lead-acid battery side, lead-acids were very tolerant. So if there was imbalances in the cells, it would still work for a decent amount of time. But lithium-ion is a little intolerant battery. So therefore, it requires intelligent battery management systems, which basically helps to balance. The best example I would, for people who are new, to understand is, a carriage being pulled by multiple horses. If they're not of the equal power, capacity, speed, then effectively that chariot will not go the right way. And that's what the BMS is doing for you. And if you look at the problems we're facing today, people are using cheap cells, which have basically low specific energy. We have not designed our packs at temperature gradients. We're importing packs which have been designed for cooler climates. And these packs have shorter lifespan and unreliability. And more importantly, over and above this, we are not looking at a system as a whole when looking at an electric vehicle. We think it's a very simple case of trading some material. We're not realizing we're talking of electric vehicle in this application as an automobile, where there's somebody's life at stake. And the person who's going to use the vehicle is going to use in different ways. It is not a specific way. So if you're using an AC, you're using in a specific way. You can do so much to your air conditioning. But when it comes to an automobile, there are 20 other things you can do which are not controlled, which cannot be controlled by the manufacturer. And therefore, that tolerance in design, that factor of safety which has to be considered. So if you're looking at a solution, you're looking at packs which are safe, secure, reliable, and will deliver performance. This is the mantra we follow at Method. And for that, you would need next-gen cells, you would need great BMS, you would need good structural design, thermal management system, which should have gone through intense testing and validation, simulation, and system-level integration. I would like to spend a little time in system-level integration because when people look at pieces, but a product which is being used by the customer is not a single piece. He's using the integration of all those pieces, and that is where engineering is involved, and people will have to spend time a little more than what they're doing in terms of doing their launches. BMS is nothing new. We know this for a long time, but what is most important for a BMS, if somebody is looking at it when they're developing from scratch, is it should have a good SOC, SOH, SOP capabilities, should have a good sensory system, so that basically BMS should be in control of the battery pack, which is the most important thing. And one of the reasons I feel that we are seeing so many failures in the field is that the BMS is not functioning appropriately. The brain is not able to control the body effectively, and these are the failures we're seeing today. This is something I already spoke about. SOC, SOH, SOP, active and voltage protection, these are standard features, and temperature protection. Thermal management system. So this is something which people miss. In the low-speed vehicles, the thermal management is not so critical, because what happens is your discharge rate is lower, battery is still cooler. But when you're looking at applications where the speeds are going higher, this is something which one has to be aware of. Actually, in our case, people have also found some solutions. A vehicle which is supposed to be a 25 kilometer per hour, with some manipulations, they're using it for 45 kilometers per hour. But they're not realizing as the speed is going up, the resistance is, the current required is going up, and the losses are going up at the rate of I square R. With this increase in losses, the temperature is going up. which effectively, if you're not designed your pack well, then you will have a problem. And specifically, if you look at automotive batteries, people are using NCM chemistry. NCM is a little unstable with respect to LFP. Then the order of problem is of a different level. So one needs to ensure that the pack is operating at the right temperature range, which will help improve the reliability and cycle life, and also the safety. There's something we have done at Matter. So, yesterday only we released our Matter Energy 1.0, India's first actively liquid cooled battery pack for electric two-wheeler, specifically for our vehicle Matter. This pack has smart BMS with advanced sensing capabilities. It has got a very intelligent thermal management system, basically the active cooling system, which is taking out the heat load, which will better the performance. So the very important thing here is there is a temperature delta which is allowed between the cells in the pack, between the highest and the lowest temperature. And this is a very critical part which has to be managed. And that's what our system is designed for. Your mechanical design should be robust. You should have done your simulation analysis to a level that your testing needs are lower, because everybody's under pressure to launch faster. And you should have gone through rigorous testing and validation so that battery is good to perform in all conditions. System implication is something I already spoke about. This is the image of the battery pack. I'm very happy that our engineers have been able to achieve and create a pack which is very good for the Indian conditions and for a vehicle which is designed to run at a very high speed. So whatever I spoke about in terms of system integration. So when you're looking at a system, it's not only the vehicle. The battery pack itself is a system because it's a combination of cell, BMS and thermal management system. So the whole system here has to work and deliver to the demands of the overall system, which is the vehicle. And that's what the Matters pack is delivering. Happy that it got very good response from the audience when it was released yesterday. When you're looking at product development, you'll have to look at comprehensive product development. So at Matter, we tested more than 40 cells of different makes from various economies, because in India we don't have cell manufacturers, and we evaluated those cells on various parameters like thermal runaway performance, drive cycle reliability, and safety. And this is what that cell level, and when we use those cells to make packs, and then we expose those packs to various tests of performance, mechanical endurance, reliability, and safety. So after going through so many tests, we are saying today that after 3 years, that our pack is good to be used for the vehicle application. And we have conducted a lot of simulation. I would not say 3 years is a less time, but we also, while reaching this level, we have spent a lot of time on simulating all our battery packs, because we felt that just making a physical prototype will not help. So we started with simulation, did a lot of analysis, and then reached a level where the product will launch. So the point I was trying to talk now, when we're looking at a system level integration, is the best example I can think of in my previous organization was the motor. So when we got the motor from the vendor, we were told that the motor is delivering almost 85 to 90% efficiency. But when we started selling, we were realizing the vehicle was not getting sufficient range. We were having battery failures, and all this was happening because when the customer was using in different terrains. So we were not able to pinpoint the problem. We struggled with the problem for a long time. And then when we put the motor on a test bed, we realized the motor, which is supposed to deliver 85 to 90%, is actually delivering around 30 to 40% efficiency at an overall level. Because the scooters we were selling, which were basically between 25 to 50 kilometers per hour, they were a stop and go application. And effectively, by the time it starts from zero, by the time it reaches 40, 45, it has to stop again because there is a red light. And in this zone, It was there at the peak efficiency point only for a small time, and the lowest efficiency being approximately 10%. So if you can realize, if a motor which is 1 kilowatt and it's there, say if in the duty cycle, say for 20% also at the 10%, so 90% of the power is basically going as a heat load. And this whole problem is exaggerated if the vehicle has been parked in the open space. So the temperatures these days are going to as high as 45 degrees. And the bigger problem is the temperature differential. If you look at the mornings, it is around 25, 30, and in the evening, in the afternoon, it's coming to around 40, 45. So the temperature difference is 15 degrees. It is what the chemistry is going through in a day. And then the system, as a pack, somebody has not looked at appropriately. And the system level, when somebody thinks it is 85 to 90, but is actually delivering only 45 to 50%. And this is what is leading to various problems, because we are not looking at a product at a system level. So I think with this, I end my presentation. If there are questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, taking us through your presentation and giving out all the insights into the thermal management system, as you rightly mentioned. It's really critical when you talk about all the incidences that we are seeing over the recent past in India in electric two-wheelers. I will take a few questions and I'll throw them to you. We have got a question from Mr. Xavier Phillips, and he has asked that, can your battery pack also be used in three-wheelers?
Yes, Mr. Phillips. That's what I spoke about, right? We have designed the product for an application. So today our application is a two-wheeler, but if suppose we get a requirement, we can develop a product for three-wheeler application. We will look at the overall product requirement in terms of load, delivery, top speed, acceleration, and with that we can definitely develop a product specifically for three-wheeler application. No problems at all.
Right. And if I may press you a little bit, Mr. Singh, you've gone into the details of the thermal management system, and also we'll be talking about your battery, the one that you've revealed recently, which includes this inbuilt active cooling technology. Yeah. So if you look at it from a cost perspective, so do you think there is a significant difference if you're looking at a battery which is without a cooling mechanism and one which utilizes it?
So Mayank, it's a very good question, but it has to be looked from the perspective of a certain level of performance to be delivered to the customer.
Yeah.
If suppose I've got a system which is not delivering what it is meant to deliver, then it has no meaning, right? What is cost? Cost is if you're creating value for the customer at that point. So, we did design a pack, tested it, and realized that we're not delivering the right value, because the application, the electric two-wheeler which we are developing, the motorcycle, is demanding those kind of currents, because of which there was a lot of heat dissipation. So we can just leave it like that, which probably a few of my worthy friends have done. But that was not doing justice to the product and the technology and the customer.
Right. I think there's some network trouble at Mr. Singh's end, so I believe we've lost the connection there. So with that, we'll close this technical presentation session and we'll move to the next session, which is okay, Mr. Singh, you're back. So I believe there was some technical glitch.
Sorry, I can't hear you, man.
Yeah, I believe there was some technical glitch in the connection and we lost you for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I was saying is the delta in cost because of thermal management system is very well compensated in terms of a higher cycle life, performance, and durability of the overall system.
Right. Okay, I'll take one last question. It has come from Mr. Samrat. Are you using cylindrical cells with the LFP chemistry?
No, we are using cylindrical cells with NCA chemistry.
Okay. So I hope, Mr. Samrat, you've got your answer. And with that, Mr. Singh, I would like to close the session. Thank you very much for your presentation and for all the insights.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, man. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. And with that, we would move to the last session for this event. a one-on-one interview between Hormuz Sorabji and Mr. Mohan Lalbhai, founder and CEO of Matter. Hormuz, if I can hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mayank. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting session today, and we are on the last session, but again, a very, very interesting one. I'm really, it's my pleasure to have and welcome Mr. Mohan Lalbhai, the founder and CEO of Matter. And I'm going to be in conversation with him. Matters, as we know, is a technology innovation startup with its deep expertise in green technologies, electric motors, battery management systems. We've just seen the battery pack, thermal management system, and so on. And Mr. Lalbhai will be telling us more about his company, his products, his strategy. Mr. Lalbhai, welcome to the Two-Wheeler Conclave. And, to begin with, you'd be the right person to just give us an overview of Matter, its aims, vision, objectives. So over to you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and it's a pleasure to be here. So talking about Matter, and I'm gonna kind of take bits and pieces of the last presentation along in the conversation going forward. Matter was founded with a vision to accelerate the adoption of EVs in India. And that meant understanding the Indian use case, understanding the Indian needs, understanding what is it that truly India requires. A product built for some other use case in some other part of the world may not be the right fit for the Indian consumer. And we felt it was high time that the Indian consumer, out of lack of better options, made poor choices. And that was the core founding objective of Matter. So it's been over 3 years that we've been building out piece by piece by piece the core technologies that make an electric vehicle an electric vehicle. So as you mentioned that, yes, our drivetrain, the battery pack, along with the other electronics, the peripherals, the software layers, there's a lot of work that Matter has done and will continue doing until we reach our target.
Right. Mr. Lalbhai, you raise an interesting point that, to do it for India. I just wanted to ask you, what are the unique requirements, India poses? Would it be, obviously, we've talked about the high ambient temperatures. This is really one of possibly the hottest country which has reached a certain scale of electrification. Is it cost as well? And what really are really the key challenges or the nuances in developing, the products for India? I mean, right now what we are seeing is a lot of products coming from maybe some other country, being rebadged and sold over here, and they get into a problem, and sometimes that even gives EVs a bad name, and we've been seeing that. In fact, sometimes there's too much panic around this. So just two questions over there. What is it that you'll do, which is really, what are the nuances of the Indian market? I would imagine cost is one of them, and of course, operating in very high ambient temperatures is another one of them.
So Mr. Sorabji, you picked them up right. Cost and temperature are the ones which are, the lowest hanging fruit of them all. But that is not even, the entire story here.
Right.
We need to understand the roads that we are driving on. We need to understand the vibration profiles. We need to understand how everything comes together, especially in the context of what is the weight that a particular vehicle has to carry. We need to understand what are the driving uses. Is it city? Is it highway driving? There's a lot on the vehicle which is not truly understood, which needs to be captured well. And this defines one of the core basic blocks when you're talking safety, security, reliability, and performance. If we truly do not know for what we are building or for whom we are building, it's a goose chase. You really don't know where you'll end up. And that is where, just to give an example, two people with a gas cylinder out in the front on a two-wheeler is a very different use case as compared to one person driving it. And India as a country, we have varied demographies, and we are the largest kind of a mix of unique users in one country, and that is where there is never going to be a one product fits all approach. There will have to be multiple products which are offered, which cater to different use cases, and those products need to be understood in detail and presented as such. There can never be misinformation on this, because as you rightly said, it does have a certain damaging impact on the ecosystem.
Right. You said, designing products for India, you just come out with your own battery pack. Question is two questions, which I think maybe are challenges. One is to get the data. I mean, we are still on a very early journey of electrification. I don't know if we have enough data on this. And secondly, what I understand is really the dearth or lack of real talent in this space. I mean, it is very new, and we have traditionally been obviously rooted in IC engines and those technologies. Do you think these are a couple of challenges just from the fact that we are still very much in a nascency, especially in the Indian market?
So on the lack of data, I will say that we are the largest two-wheeler producer and consumer on the planet.
What I meant is we are just a few years, we're not too many. I mean, we've not even gone through a life cycle of products, so to speak, to get the full life cycle kind of data of a product. That's what I was saying.
So on that topic, there are enough simulation, testing, validation, and analysis methods available. But it is truly about making sure that, again, what are you designing for? Is this a product that's supposed to run in city conditions in metros, as compared to something that's gonna go between cities on the highway in Rajasthan? Now, there's an absolute delta in terms of engineering when you're looking at these two. And what are you truly covering when you're giving a product for India? So I don't think life cycle so much. I think it is the way the design starts from ground up. I mean, we at Matter have gone through the journey. We ourselves have burnt our hands, fingers, toes, whatever you call it, multiple times in coming out with the product we have. I mean, and sometimes we were so confident about something working out, but truly when the team put it in a particular use case, it failed. And that is the true challenge that comes in when you're doing it for the first time. The second time onwards, all of this information, the mindset towards design, everything gets very well aligned, and you don't see that. So I would call this as a teething trouble, but not really something which is a roadblock. As far as talent is concerned, I would beg to differ on that topic, that India has been home to many multinational corporations across the globe. People in India designing powertrains and battery packs through the MNCs for their European counterparts. So the skill is definitely there in India. It is just that, it needs to be brought together with the right vision and the right, I would say, clarity of thought on what needs to be done. And it's definitely not a big concern. And especially at Matter, I mean, we've been very open to taking on board people, even from allied industries, and bring them in, because at the end of the day, what you need is somebody who can actually solve the problem you have. Qualifications after a point really matters only so much.
Right. No, that's very interesting. And coming to what you had earlier said, that we are just the fact that we are such a large EV market, I mean, the two-wheeler market, and obviously EVs are growing within that. We would have a lot of data just by the sheer number of vehicles on the road going forward. I just wanted to get a sense of the let's say the two-wheeler industry from you. How do you see it shaping up, especially in the EV space? Are we going to see segmentation? What do you think of the market size? We have a lot of low-speed products right now. Do you see them transitioning, to more kind of substantial products? Of course, they'll get more expensive. And the whole thing of, in the end, subsidies, how long they will last and the impact if that would be taken away. So, is there what are the categories Matter is focusing on within this?
So I'll start with the last question, which is, so we are currently focusing on electric two-wheelers.
Yeah.
Not going into further specifics until we start launching products, but electric two-wheelers as a whole is a segment which is here to stay. And I wasn't old enough when this transition happened, but I've been taught enough about it when the Bajaj scooter went to a motorcycle, and a scooter to motorcycle transition. And from there, the core learnings which are there is that the cost of ownership was the true driver. Even though people had to go through a certain inconvenience during that transition, which is true even when newer generation motorcycles were launched. And that is the same philosophy which is going to keep going forward. Electric vehicles today drive a certain cost advantage in operation as compared to internal combustion vehicles, which in the future will become a conversation about electric vehicle efficiency and total cost of ownership. That coupled with state-of-the-art features, which we are all feature geeks today. So that is what is truly going to drive adoption. And motorcycles are the mainstay of India. India runs on motorcycles. Yes, India runs on two-wheelers, but India specifically runs on motorcycles. And we don't really see that changing overnight. It is going to be a part of the transition once the right kind of products are available in India. Because today the EV space in India is a supply constraint, not only from chip shortages and material prices moving, but especially from the availability of products which actually solve consumer needs. So once that playing field starts stabilizing, we would see either a transition, some percentage point changes here and there, but largely it's still going to stay a motorcycle dominated market.
And, I want to touch upon the cost issue. Okay, so I get what you're saying. That's very interesting. While a lot of people are betting a lot on scooters, and we've seen that, you feel electric motorbikes, there's a lot of opportunity going forward. So, before I get into the next question, why, scooters tend to lend themselves a little bit better for electrification, or so it would seem. But you are obviously very bullish on motorcycles as well.
Again, it's the problem that you're trying to solve. Once you start thinking from a flat piece of paper saying we need to solve this problem, eventually solutions come out of it. It is all about grit and engineering that is going to solve these challenges. And somebody had to go out and say, if not anyone else, then us. Somebody has to solve these problems.
Right. And, the other one big hurdle, obviously, is cost. Now, we were hoping that, with scale, with newer technologies, improving efficiencies in manufacturing, the cost of electric products would come down and would soon be have cost parity with the ICE products. But, we've seen lithium prices going through the roof completely in the last 1 year. We are not sure whether subsidies will be there forever. So with these two kind of issues, what is your thought on, let's say, can they be really cost competitive as quickly as we thought they could be?
So we've actually lost 2 years because of the pandemic, the industry as a whole, and the geopolitical situations which keep evolving, which keep inflation at where it is. We see these as a temporary blip. The general trend of lithium has always been downward, and it will continue going downward. The subsidy has actually done its purpose. It has actually enabled a conversation around electric vehicles in the entire country. I would not know anyone who is at least not aware of the fact that electric vehicles are mainstream now. And with that being said, it would be great if, it's just these 2 years which need to be caught up. We really don't see much of a delta if either the subsidy could be extended or global supply chains are able to figure out how to catch up. either ways, this is a very, very temporary problem. And in the longer term, this is not going to be something that's going to be a conversation at all.
Right. So that's interesting. So what you're saying is these two issues long term are not going to be issues. I mean, obviously subsidies is something which we've not got the full benefit of, or we can, because we've lost 2 years. So what you're suggesting is, they perhaps we look at further 2 years from now on, and the fact that you do feel lithium and other raw material prices will come down eventually, as we are living in a shortage economy right now. But once things free up, you think it'll be we'll be back on track?
100%. I mean, we are already seeing signs of some breathers coming out in terms of the semiconductor shortages. I mean, things which were at 80 plus weeks for lead time have started dropping fast. And, we're hopeful that these are small blips which happen to all industries and any industry. Nobody spared out of these. And they will, I mean, this is for us kind of a bump on the road, nothing else.
Right. And again, just sticking to the market, what is your forecast or prediction of, let's say the size of the eventual electric bike two-wheeler market?
So that's a very interesting conversation, because, we tend to use the 22 million vehicles two-wheeler market. But there is also a very young force which is going to come into working life in the next few years. And mobility is going to be required for everyone. I mean, it's a part of life. You can't really do without. And that is where we are expecting that this current fundamental number is going to keep growing at a significant rate. And about 30% of that number is very, very much possible by the turn of the decade. For sure, if not more. And it all comes down to companies like Matter and others, whoever are participating in this journey, to actually start delivering products which the consumers really would like to adopt.
Right. And, just looking at, just going specific to the technologies, I mean, you developed your Matter One battery pack, but again, conversation today is kind of is, I would say, even hijacked by all the thermal issues which we've been having. Mr. Singh also spoke about it. So obviously, this kind of raises the question on things like everything about BMS systems, thermal management. And I just wanted to get your views, on respect to battery technologies. What are the trends going forward? Of course, there's testing and validation. I mean, do you think there has to be regulation to even specify the technology? Because today we've seen even journalists becoming experts saying you have to have liquid cooling for everything, for example. So I just wanted to get your sense on the technologies, the trends, and which direction they would be heading, and especially given your experience.
So, I'll take a step back and kind of specify a point that we keep talking about batteries, because those are the parts which are really not performing up to spec today as the market's talking about them. But that still does not leave away motors, the powertrain, the other electronics. These are also all prone to failures if not designed properly. So I would like to kind of talk about, there have been instances in the past where battery is new, but the performance is still deteriorated. And, people start blaming the battery before they look at all the other things that actually go into the product. Battery is just a source of energy, and that just needs to be handled well. I wouldn't even say delicately. These are robust built products which can undergo a lot more than what a vehicle can throw at them. But it's the overall system which actually tends to start seeing failures. And, one part not working in an entire body means the body is not perfectly fine. And that is the problem where we have actually thought through and designed all critical elements. I mean, when we talk about even the motor itself, there are certain things which have to be taken care of. And, for us, we are not looking at this as a short-term thing, we make and sell. We need to take care of our customers through the entire journey of adoption and make sure they come back for a second product. So with that in mind, it becomes very essential that all technologies obviously, especially the battery, but all technologies are treated with respect. And truly, there are no shortcuts in developing automotive products in India or elsewhere as well. I mean, there can't be a shortcut because the testing and validation time, what it is required, we talk about summer trials and winter trials, they have to be done. We need to truly understand even what we are sending out on the road. A lot of people, I mean, us included, it is very easy to make proof of concepts or prototypes. It's actually when we need to take them to production is where that diligence is truly required. And in our 3-year journey, we have created infinite number of prototypes, but the true blood, sweat, and tears comes in when you're trying to productionize the vehicle.
No, that's very refreshing to hear because, you know, honestly, there was a general view that some startups, you know, with us just want to rush into things, but it's really heartening to hear that you do understand the kind of importance of validation, especially through a seasonal life cycle. I mean, you can't have all 4 seasons in less than 365 days. So only God can do that, maybe. But I get what you're saying. So, but again, you know, I want to just, you know, go back to the fact that, you know, whilst you have said that you do, you know, Matter takes the validation very, very seriously. I just want to touch a bit on the cell chemistry and at the cell level, because that frankly is the secret sauce. One is, do you see chemistries really evolving over time? I mean, a move to solid state that still seems to be quite far away. You know, NMC, LCA, LFP. I mean, is there any kind of a trend you see happening for Indian conditions? And, you know, even eventually what future technologies would be? And another question after that, which makes investing quite difficult at the cell level, because huge amount of investment, you know, and you would need a fair amount of time for that to pay off in terms of scale.
So, I mean, I've heard this generalization for quite some time, that there is one cell chemistry which is the winner. We are trying to equate this to petrol and diesel, where standardization has reached a certain level. But unfortunately, I mean, we can talk about sodium ions, we can talk about NCAs, NCMs, LFPs, LTOs. All of these chemistries have a certain characteristic. And all of these have different applications. So, I mean, if I have to talk energy, I will not even drop the idea of hydrogen for certain kinds of automotive products. There is no one true winner. There will be winners in classes.
No silver bullet. Yeah.
There can't be a silver bullet, because that means that we are telling ourselves that we know it all.
Right.
And that is definitely not true. We are also evolving with the industry, as are the chemistries. And that is where the ability to have control over your technology from a complete vertical integration makes absolute sense, because you are then able to pivot to the next best thing, if there is one, or still continue and reach the economies of scale which are required for the current technologies which exist. So we are not expecting the LFPs or the NCMs or the NCAs to disappear when sodium ion arrives. No, that's factually incorrect. Right. And there will be optimizations and further developments, but you know, the core materials are not really gonna disappear.
Right.
So from an investing perspective, again, you know, India is gonna require close to 250 gigawatt hours of batteries in the next 10 years. So, yeah, I mean, and I can't say that it's all gonna be one chemistry or the other. So even people who are putting in battery plants today will have to scale them 10 times over to actually meet India's demand. And that is where I believe that there is no wrong choice today. Right. There is always going to be a need for a particular chemistry in India.
Right. So obviously, you know, a very healthy forecast which you see. But, you know, I just want to ask you, if you were to sum up, maybe we're running short of time, but just want to get your thoughts on, let's say, the key triggers for mass adoption of, you know, two-wheelers. I mean, we know the typical ones: cost, range, all that sort of thing. But is there anything else that you think, you know, could really stimulate demand?
We definitely need to bring the future today. I mean, be it in terms of features, be it in terms of connectivity, be it in terms of convenience. Obviously, the hygiene factors of safety, security, reliability, and performance start delivering a product which is doing exactly what it says on the box. is good enough. India wants electric vehicles. They just don't trust them yet.
Right. Okay. So to build that trust, so you think there is a trust deficit and we need to build that trust?
Definitely. And we need to kind of show the world that India itself can produce the best vehicles it can. And on top of it, consumers are willing to try things out, but not at expense of anything. They really want it all. And that is what we are here to deliver.
Right. That's very interesting. And, but sorry, just jumping back, you were talking about batteries and all the chemistries. But, is this a bit counter to the a policy on battery standardization? I mean, you think that's a practical way forward? Because standardization in a way in one certain direction, it would mean form factor, it would mean chemistry as well, I suppose. Do you think that's practical and would it kind of inhibit innovation and technology?
So standardization on form factor, capacities, voltages will definitely inhibit more efficient systems coming around. But standardization in terms of testing, validation, and the regulatory framework, standards, I mean, any one of our AIS standards, that will definitely help the system come at par in terms of the minimum hygiene required for a battery pack. And this holds true for motors, this holds true for all the other components that go on to an electric vehicle.
Right. And last question, Mr. Alba, I'm going to pin you down on this, but it's far away. So, I don't know whether we'll be able to, we'll have to wait to see if you're right. When do you think the last ICE two-wheeler will be produced?
Again, I don't think all ICE vehicles are ever going to be eradicated. That might happen when we run out of fuel, because I don't believe there's a winner takes all approach when I'm looking at the entire automotive space. Yes, for personal vehicles, that could happen as quickly as next 15 years. But if I look at commercial vehicles and a lot of other things included, we still have aircrafts which will need fuel. So kind of setting the context, personal vehicles, I believe the next 15 years, we would have seen the last of them being produced.
Okay, great. That's an interesting forecast, and I think we are end of the session, but I think we have time maybe for just one question. We've got it from Mr. Shanmugavelu, who his question is, what's the future plan to fix matter battery in an EV bike or EV scooter as per customer requirements? So basically, if there's some issue, what plans do you have to kind of, let's say, sort it out for the customer? Clearly, he's got a trust issue already. Yeah.
No, so for that, particularly predictive maintenance and things like those are already built into the vehicle. Before the consumer is, facing difficulties on the vehicle, there is obviously the argument of transparency. We would like to inform the consumer on what is happening, and we would also be aware of what is happening so we can address this, because at the end of the day, consumer experience is a paramount pillar in our building block, and that is something that we take very seriously, and that is not something that we're going to let happen. And especially with the fact that the amount of testing and validation that's happened, there has to be something seriously amiss from our side.
Well, with that, I'd like to end the session. We've completely run out of time. Mr. Alba, it was really a pleasure talking to you. Thank you really for your very clear, concise, thoughts. Gives us a lot of hope and trust that, companies like yours will kind of push towards for a better, safer, cleaner future with, especially with electrification. And really wish you all the best in your journey ahead. And with that, I'd like to close this session and hand it over to Mike. But any last words you want to say, Mr. Lalba? I think you were.
So I actually wanted to thank you for the opportunity, and the pleasure is all mine. And it's actually heartening to see a lot of interest and a lot of ideas in this space. And I am a strong believer of Make in India, for India, and by India. And that's the road we are on. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Absolute pleasure, Mr. Lalbhai. And, I think it's a journey everyone is on. There's no U-turns on this road. It's just trying to accelerate as quickly as possible. So thanks very much again. And with that, I will end this session and hand it back to Mayank, to close it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayank.
Thank you so much, Hormuz. Thank you, Mr. Lalbhai. It was really a wonderful conversation, and thank you, Hormuz, for summing it up really nicely. We are actually in the midst of some really nice disruptions, if I may say so. And over the last 2 days, as Mr. Lalbhai was saying, it is time for India to step up its game and sort of catch this opportunity to become as a global EV hub. If you talk about the electric two-wheeler space, we've had an interesting, 2-day event with lots of great speakers, starting right from Tarun Mehta, the CEO of Ather Energy. Today, we had Mr. Chetan Maini from Sun Mobility. And in the middle of all of this, we had some great young brains coming from the startup ecosystem in India in the electric two-wheeler space. So we really hope that you enjoyed this overall 2-day event on the various challenges and opportunities of the electric two-wheeler space. And with that, we would like to, thank you, all of you, for your support and for your participation over the 2 days. And I would like to, again, thank our sponsors for this event, our presenting partner, Varroc, powered by BASF, technology partner Matter, and associate partners, Covestro and Celanese. If you missed any of the sessions and you would want to go back and see them again, you could go to the Autocar Professional YouTube channel. You can find the recordings there, and you can just log in there and, just have a look at the recorded runs. And with that, we hope to see you next time with another event. Till then, thank you so much for your participation. Take care.